Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this regular Sterling Heights City Council meeting to order. If you would, please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dear God, please bless our elected officials. Grant them courage and wisdom to do what is right for all citizens. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Ms. Riska. Can we have the roll call, please?
Mayor Taylor?
Here.
Zarowski?
Here.
Kraske?
Present.
Radke?
Present.
Present.
Jimenez?
Here.
Present.
Thank you, Council. We need approval of the agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Mrs. Koski.
move to approve the agenda.
Support.
Been moved and supported. Is there any discussion? No discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. First item on our agenda tonight is a report from our city manager, Mark Vanderpool. Mr. Vanderpool.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to remind everyone that we will be closed for Memorial Day on Monday, so please take note. And with that in mind, there'll be no refuse collection. Refuse collection will resume on Tuesday and then will be delayed for 1 day all week, including Fridays will be picked up on Saturday. And also, the Sterling Heights 45th Annual Memorial Day festivities will commence on Monday with a 9 a.m. Memorial Day ceremony in the courtyard between City Hall and the Police Department. Again, that's at 9 a.m. And this year's theme is Salute to Service, honoring heroes and innovations. And for the second year in a row, we'll be featuring an exciting Tuskegee Airman flyover using authentic World War II Tuskegee airplanes. The ceremony will feature remarks from our 2024 Grand Marshal, Judge Stephen Zarowski. Also, the mayor will be speaking, and the chairperson of the Arts Commission, Jeannie Shabath-Lewis. In keeping with the long-standing tradition, the 1st Michigan Colonial Fife and Drum Corps will perform at the ceremony, marking their 43rd year doing so. And again, the parade begins at 10 a.m., There's always a great turnout from the community. It's wonderful to see. So look forward to the ceremony and the parade on Monday. And also, I wanted to remind everyone, since it begins on preceding the Memorial Day holiday, and that is a fireworks law reminder. State law prohibits the city from banning the use of consumer-grade fireworks on the following days: the Saturday and Sunday immediately preceding Memorial Day. So again, I emphasize preceding Memorial Day. June 29th through July 4th, the Saturday and Sunday immediately preceding Labor Day, and then between 11 a.m. and on December 31st and 1 a.m. on January 1st. So please keep that in mind. This means that everyone has a right to use these types of fireworks that discharge in the air. But they can only be discharged from 11 a.m. until 11:45 on those days, with the exception of New Year's going to 1 o'clock then. The city has enacted, unlike other communities, an ordinance which prohibits the use of consumer fireworks for the remaining days of the year. Other communities will allow fireworks throughout the year. We do not do that. We only allow them on those days mandated by the state of Michigan. So there's much more information on our website regarding that, and it's really important that the community takes note. And also, Mayor, I'm honored to introduce this evening Senator Michael Weber, who would like to give a legislative update.
Yeah, thank you, City Manager Vanderpool and Mayor Taylor and council members. So I try to do these a couple times a year, so spring and hopefully come back to you here in the fall. Michael Weber, I do serve as a state senator for the 9th District, which includes the western part of Sterling Heights, Utica, small portion of Lower Shelby Township, Troy, and the greater Rochester area. And right now it's budget season, and so we're right in the middle of budget season here. What that means in terms of statutory revenue sharing, constitutional revenue sharing. In terms of the statutory, Governor recommended and the Senate concurred with a 5% ongoing statutory revenue sharing increase. That amounts to about $29 million for an increase for a total of $322.9 million. The constitutional revenue sharing did go down. The total is $1.1 billion, but it went down by about $3 million because of our January consensus revenue estimating conference. We are, and I'm catching up on what was talked about at the current one on Friday, but that obviously is going to also affect our budget. It sounded like we had pretty stagnant revenue in that regard. I've talked about this before, the Revenue Sharing Trust Fund. We're really getting close on this, and I know it's to the work of MML and a lot of folks that have been pushing for this. The Senate recommendation actually includes the Revenue Sharing Trust Fund concept into the budget. So that would actually mean more money this year than what the statutory revenue sharing recommendation was. So we feel like if we can get it, and we tried last year too, but if we can get it into the budget process, then we can follow up with the statutory change, which already passed the House with very broad support, and hopefully finally be able to get that done in terms of providing certainty on the revenue sharing piece. In terms of infrastructure, we are trying to spend a little bit more in general fund to get to our federal match. There is more federal matching dollars for us to get to. So we're spending about $95 million for federal match opportunities and $40 million for priority bridge investments. What that means in terms of Act 51 money, it looks like it's about a $36 million increase under Act 51 dollars for cities and villages. And I should also note that, the reason why we're doing more out of general fund in terms of the federal match is A, because there is more federal match available, and B, we have less state transportation funds available to match for match purposes because of paying down bonding debt, and so that's part of it. I already talked a little bit about the Revenue Sharing Trust Fund. We are actively still pushing that from a statutory standpoint. Again, if we can get it in the budget, we then will follow up with a budget implementation bill to try to get that passed. It's currently sitting in the Senate Finance Committee that I don't serve on, but we're actually hoping one of the MML days we could get a hearing there and bring a lot of our MML friends to the hearing room, but that was not meant to be on that particular day, but we're still pushing. I know City Manager Vanderpool wanted me to talk a little bit about House Bill 5695 dealing with the GMET program. That does have bipartisan support, passed the House. And then the House also in their DHHS, Health and Human Services budget, did cover the $2 million cost of that. We have not seen that yet. I believe that's also in the Finance Committee. We have not seen that yet on the Senate floor, but I know that it's something that for folks that represent these communities, they want to see that happen, and I think that would be helpful. I know another thing that we're working on, I serve as co-chair for the Bipartisan Aerospace and Defense Caucus. Recently, the governor and MEDC launched kind of a rebrand of the Defense Center, the Office of Defense and Aerospace Innovation, still within the MEDC, and that's to attract, retain, and grow investment into the state's defense and aerospace industry. So right now, we're excited about that. Obviously, we'll see if it's more than just a rebrand, and obviously kind of where we go from there with Colonel Gutierrez and the new leadership that's over there. Last, I just wanted to point out a bill that I'm sponsoring and supporting, Senate Bill 699, dealing with road debt modernization. We're trying to get that off the ground. This is an interesting bill, as we were talking about bonding. So what it would do is it would ensure that all transportation debt services paid out of MDOT's funding portion of PA 51. So if enacted, the bill would ensure over $30 million more in road funding for our locals each year. So instead of putting that through the process at the top, it really, I think, the local part would stay held harmless, I guess, in that regard. And Yeah, and then for more information for residents here and at home, they could certainly sign up for our monthly e-news, senatormichaelweber.com, or call our office at 517-373-0994. Lastly, I would just say that when I did this presentation to the Rochester Hills Mayor Taylor, I did talk about, and Councilman Yanez, how great the youth council visit was that you guys did, and how a lot of the council members came, and how it was kind of a better trip to Lansing than what Rochester Hills did. So
That doesn't surprise me in the least bit.
So,
Having spent some
I threw the
significant time
gauntlet
with Mayor
down, yes.
Barnett recently, I'm surprised that they have a functioning city at all, but, you know, I
But-
appreciate that. Hopefully they learned from the experience that we had and you were able to. you
I
spent
just
some
told them it was you guys came out in full force, and it was great to see. So I appreciate it. And I can take any questions if you guys have any questions.
Council, anyone with any questions for Senator Weber?
All right.
Thank you very much.
Have a great
We
meeting. Thank
Appreciate
you.
you being here and
Yeah.
updating us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Mayor, I have just one last item on my report, and this is a two-part presentation. First, our city engineer, Brent Bayshaw, is going to talk about a project, a state road project that's going to be rather disruptive in our city. And we're going to end on a very positive note, and that's talking about the city's first ever bike lane. That's going to be debuted next Thursday, that is. And we have 3 individuals that will be joining our city engineer in that presentation, and that's Lieutenant Bisdorf, who's in charge of our traffic bureau, also Melanie Davis with our community relations department, who's going to be talking about our public education campaign. I also wanted to recognize Nick Holly, who's in the audience too, who spent a lot of time designing our bike lane setup. So you're going to hear more about that. So first, we're going to start out with Brent talking about the not so good news.
Thank you, Mr. Vanderpool, Mayor Taylor, members of council, Mr. Koszubski, and it's not all that bad, Mark. So yes, I'm here to, we'll have a lot of movement on 2 of our major road projects over the next couple weeks. I'm here to just do a brief update on those. The project that Mark mentioned first is the Clinton River Road Bridge over M53. So the reconstruction of this bridge is part of the M53 project. It is necessary to close the road to reconstruct this bridge, and that is the bad news. The good news is that it's going to connect sidewalk on the east side of the road between these 2 circles shown, all the way from 19 Mile Road to the sidewalk across Henry Ford High School. So the sidewalk on the bridge will look like this. It'll have a pedestrian vehicular separation. And although it will be closed for approximately 3 months, we did hold off for this closure to do it during the summer months to try to avoid school as much as possible. So the goal is to have this bridge back open by the end of August. The detours will be posted from, if you're going southeast on Clinton River Road, you'll be posted 19 Mile Road to Shana Road and back to Clinton River Road. And then the opposite for going, if you're traveling northwest, you'll go up to 19 Mile Road back over to Clinton River Road. So, yeah, we know this will be a disruption. It'll be a nice improvement in the end. The sidewalk will be able to tie into, a lot of different things in the future, like Donovan Park, the HCMA Trail, which is on the west side of the river. And all of these tie-ins can be made with our Clinton River Road project that we just received a federal earmark for. So that'll be an exciting improvement that will be upcoming. The second project I'd like to highlight is the creation of the bike lanes on Plumbrook Road between 17 Mile Road and Shana Road. The layout of the bike lanes began last week with some paint lines going down, and today actually saw the paint lines going down. I'd like to get into a few design specifics. Then I'd like to introduce Traffic Lieutenant Jason Bisdorf to speak on the PD aspect, and then Community Relations Director Melanie Davis, who will speak on the rollout plan. But before I get into what to expect, I'd like to go back and remember why Plumbrook Road was chosen for this pilot program. So the city's been reviewing a lot of our road projects over the last handful of years for attractiveness to bike lanes, and Plum Brook checked a lot of these boxes. These bike lane projects are becoming very popular in the area, although this is our first in Sterling Heights. We visited projects in Detroit, Ann Arbor, Oak Park, Ferndale, just to name a few that are rolled out bike lane projects as well. So why was Plum Brook attractive? So first of all, it has connectivity to our trailway system. Everyone's familiar with the Dodge Park Trail System we built in 2016 on the east side, and that connects all the way up to our city center and our Dodge Park system and our rec center. And on the east, on the west side of Shaner, we're tying into the HCMA trail on the west side. And as most of you know, this trail goes down to Metro Parkway, all the way to Metro Beach, and connects through our parkway system up north through Utica and continues on. And this is actually a portion of the Iron Bell Trail. So we had a couple nice trailway connections. We have a heavy residential area, which is a point of origination for many users. We had minimal physical roadway work needed to construct these bike lanes. A lot of the work was just reimagining the footprint of the existing roadway. Plum Brook Road has low speeds. It's a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit. And then we also have an element of traffic calming that we could introduce, and that is in the form of slightly narrow travel lanes. So part of our traffic calming study we're going through now is reviewing these types of traffic calming measures, and reducing of the travel lane slightly can provide a major impact on the travel speeds that are seen on the roadway. So we had that ability to provide this traffic calming element, and we're excited to see how that turns out. We do have some pre-speed data that we've taken, so we'll be able to compare that to our post painting speeds. Now I'd like to get into the design. The bike lanes were designed to meet all federal and state requirements. We went above and beyond the minimum requirements, included many safety features that also aim to improve the comfort level of the users and potential users. So the picture on the left is Packard Street in Ann Arbor, and this meets all requirements. It's a 4-foot wide bike lane with a one solid white stripe separating vehicular traffic. Our design more mirrors the picture on the right. So we added a 2-foot buffer that's crosshatched. We also added approximately 200 delineators, which are shown in the bottom right picture. And lastly, we added areas of green paint that will increase both bicyclists and vehicular awareness to sensitive areas. So all three of these measures are designed to increase the safety and increase the comfort level of using the bike lanes, as this is the first really major road bike lane project in the city. So a few examples on what the striping will look like. This is an engineering drawing, so bear with me. The bike lanes will be along the curb. It's 4 foot wide with a 2-foot buffer. It varies a little bit, but in general, it's 2 feet. The green markings will be shown as you cross these. This is a typical local road intersection. So this will give the awareness to both a vehicle coming out of the local road and the users of the bike lane. This is the intersection of Dodge Park Road. So again, you'll have a green crosswalk highlighting the location of the path, and users will be able to come out of the intersection and use the existing crosswalks to get onto the desired pathway they'd like to. Lastly, this is the intersection of Shaner. So we've already had a few questions on this, and I'll get into some reasoning why. So basically, we're taking the bike lane and crossing. We have a right turn lane, so the correct way to put the bike lane in is to cross the right turn lane and put it actually between the or the bike lane crosses the right turn lane, and it goes between the travel lane and the right turn lane. So this may be counterintuitive. We've had some questions on this already. You know, why is it like that? Well, it's actually safer and part of the design guidance to do that. So if you think about the top right picture is intersection in Detroit that has a similar situation. If you put the bike lane on the curb lane and you had the right turn lane to the left, when a vehicle comes into the intersection, they're looking left to see what vehicles are oncoming, and they're not seeing the bicyclist in the curb lane. So the design guidance is that it's safer to put them between the right turn lane and the travel lane, then the bicyclists can see the vehicles and vehicles can see the bicyclists. So the bottom right picture is an example in Ann Arbor. It shows a sign that shows that the pedestrian or the bicyclists have the right of way, and shows the green striping that we'll have in that area as well. Now I'd like to turn it over to Lieutenant Bisdorf.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. I am Lieutenant Jason Bisdorf with the Sterling Heights Police Department. I am currently assigned to the Traffic Safety Bureau within the department. I was asked to share some insight from the police department and law enforcement side of things regarding a new pilot program related to the bicycle lanes being opened on Plumbrook. I just wanted to start by stating that regardless of whether or not bicycle lanes are being implemented, Michigan law states that a person riding a bicycle has all the rights and is subject to all the duties applicable to the driver of a vehicle with some exceptions. Basically, that means bicycles legally have the right to share the road with vehicles regardless if there's a bike lane or if there's not. Based on the research provided from the U.S. Department of Transportation, bicycle lanes do make it safer for bicyclists, and the police department will always be an advocate for making Sterling Heights safer for our citizens. The police department's administration believes that there are two important roles that the police department will play regarding this new pilot program. The first is education, and the second is enforcement. Currently, the Michigan.gov website has a slogan related to bicycle safety. The slogan states, "Everybody's road, everybody's rules." It will be the job of the department to help educate motorists and bicyclists alike to the rules of the road through the education. Currently, the Michigan State Police website offers numerous links to valuable information such as bicycle safety brochures, Michigan Bicycle Law Reference Guide, electrical bikes in Michigan and their different classes, and a link to what every bicyclist must know, tips for riding legally and safely, put together by the League of Michigan Bicyclists. And I do have a copy of it here. It's a very easy and very informative read. If you wanted to get a copy, I could provide it for you. It is the police department's goal via our Community Service Bureau to work closely with the city's Public Relations Department and Melanie Davis for the Sterling Heights citizens to have access to the same information and same informative materials that I have here, so that they will be well equipped to have the knowledge when driving and bicycling in our city. I'm aware that our Community Service Bureau has planned some events to help spread the word regarding bicycle safety, and also has in the works a video that they will be putting together directly related to the Plumbrook bike path. The second area I spoke on was enforcement. As this path will be the first in our city, it will be important for our department to monitor this new bike lane and make sure that motor vehicle drivers and bicyclists are safe and to take appropriate enforcement action to provide a safe environment. I am currently on the city's SS4A committee, which is the Safe Streets for All, and one of the ways it has been suggested to calm and slow traffic is through lane striping. And the plan for the bike path is to heavily stripe the roadway, add delineators or what you would call semi-permanent cones, and to reduce the bike lane width to make more room for the bicyclists. We at the Traffic Safety Bureau have already gathered speed-related data on Plumbrook prior to the bike lane being installed. And once the bike lane is fully operational, we'll begin to collect data to compare pre and post data to determine if the changes had any significant impacts on the speed or the calming of the traffic. In closing, bicycle safety is truly everyone's responsibility, which includes bicyclists, motor vehicle drivers, and law enforcement. And the Sterling Heights Police Department is dedicated to do its part to make the bike path successful and safe for all of our residents and those wishing to visit our city. I believe it's Melanie's turn. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Thank you, Mayor and Council. The new Plumbrook bike lanes, they're an exciting pilot project for us and a new amenity for our community, so we're really excited to share the news about that. And it's a project that aligns perfectly with our Visioning 2040 plans and guiding principles, things like safety for our community, things like sustainability for our future, and things like connectivity. There's no better way to connect bike riding enthusiasts across the region than helping them connect to an ever-expanding network of trails that cross the entire state. And our new Plumbrook bike lane is just a piece of the puzzle that helps us do just that. And it also aligns perfectly with our non-motorized transportation plan, so we're really excited to roll this out. But with every change or anything new, there's always a public education component that will be required. So community relations will be working in collaboration with our engineers and with those in our police department to come up with a few tools to help demystify the concept of a bike lane for those who may be new to them. So first, we're going to be creating a couple of videos. The first video will feature engineers and other cyclists who will talk a little bit about the design and safety features of the bike lanes, as well as demonstrate the proper way to navigate them while on a bike in real time. The second video will feature our police department sharing additional tips on how to safely navigate the bike lanes, both for bikers and for drivers, and to kind of share a little bit more about things that they've observed in the early weeks of our bike lanes being open and answer any questions that are still out there. We'll also be creating a custom page on our website that will be filled with images and FAQs that will remain on the site so that anyone at any time in the future can access that information or use it as a refresher. And the page will be filled with content that comes from our police department, our engineers, as well as from SEMCOG, the U.S. Department of Transportation's National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, and other organizations that share best practices for the safe use of bike lanes. And if you didn't already know, May happens to be National Bike Safety Month. So what better way to put a capstone on that month but to dedicate our new Plumbrook bike lanes on Thursday, May 30th at 6 p.m. at the corner of Dodge Park and Plumbrook. We'll be hosting that night our council, media, and members of the community for this important dedication and opening. And as a part of that, we plan to have our police department's Community Services Bureau handing out free bike helmets while supplies last. And we'll also have some other fun bike safety giveaways that we've received from SEMCOG. Best of all, John Price, who is the owner of Coach's Ice Cream on that corner, has agreed to chip in with some hot deals on cold ice cream for a hot summer day for any residents who want to come out for the dedication. So we're working the details out on that. That'll be coming soon. But we will be promoting the dedication for residents who might want to come out and join us for that dedication and for some nice bike safety giveaways. We also hope to have some of our bike patrol officers that night to lead out the first individuals on bikes that attend that might want to try out that bike lane, be among the first people to give it a spin. So thank you.
And Mayor, that is the end of my report. There may be some questions on this, but I'll leave it to you to determine if that's appropriate.
Okay, council, anyone have any questions about the bike lanes or any of the other road projects? Mr. Yanis?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Through the chair to Mr. Bayshaw. Thank you. I will say the lines, especially at the right-hand turn at Plumbrook and Shanner, are very intuitive. I knew exactly what to do. I will also say when they put down like the temporary lines, the ones that I thought maybe the guy driving the truck was tuning the radio or something, got lost. But now that the main lines are down there, it's very obvious. The one thing I didn't do, I didn't think about this until you were giving the presentation, is I didn't look to my right as I crossed over. And I know that's something that drivers are going to have to be aware of because now it's not just cars on the road, right? It's bicycles and bicyclists. But the one thing I really want to point out to you is I walk my dog almost every night around the triangle, so I cross Plumbrook. I cannot cross at the intersection at Utica and Plumbrook because cars will turn left from Utica onto Plumbrook, and they try to beat the traffic coming, and they gun it. And the intersection, the crosswalk is right there.
Okay.
And so there's no buffer, safety buffer between pedestrians and those cars. So I jaywalk, sorry. I know it's on video. Mr. Lieutenant Bisdorf, please, don't write me a ticket. But I feel safer crossing the street farther down. So it's just something that you might want to take a look at as you move forward. But you guys did a great job. I'm very excited about this project, so.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Yanez. Can we get a detail out there on Plumbrook and Utica? Watch out for that.
Dinner
Jaywalking.
Yeah.
Council, anyone else? Thank you very much, Mr. Bayshaw. And that was all right, Mr. Vanderpool? Okay, thank you very much. We will move on to the next item on our agenda tonight, which is to consider the application by Universal Tool Equipment and Controls Incorporated for an industrial facilities tax exemption certificate at 42540 R. Mancini Drive. We have a presentation from our Senior Economic Development Advisor, Luke Bonner. Mr. Bonner.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. Good evening, Council, Mr. Vanderpool. Tonight's IFEC request is coming from Universal Tool Equipment and Controls, also known as UTEC. UTEC is now in their third building in Sterling Heights. They provide automation systems, welding systems, and tooling to OEMs and several other industries that are non-automotive related. The building that they are leasing, the 42540 R. Mancini Drive, we actually brought forward a little less than a year ago for speculative tax abatement. That speculative tax abatement was approved July 18th, and what that essentially did was preserve the right for a future qualifying tenant to come forward and request consideration for that IFEC application. So the investment made in the real property is roughly $4.6 million, and UTEC will be creating 25 new manufacturing jobs as part of that. Based on our IFEC guidelines, the $4.6 million is 7-year term on the abatement, and the additional 25 new job creation is another 2 years. So the total recommended IFEC term tonight is 9 years. From an impact standpoint, those full-time 25 employees, we typically use the manufacturing multiplier of 4. So we assume that there will be 100 indirect or downstream jobs created as a part of this project. We use a very conservative average wage of $45,000, which would have another $4.5 million impact economically in the area. From a property tax perspective, although this is a 50% tax abatement request, there's also the 50% of new taxes that will be generated. And over that 9-year period of time, we anticipate roughly $172,000 in new city taxes being generated, $289,000 in school taxes, and a total of $594,000 in total taxes generated between city and school over that property tax abatement term. This evening, we have Bill Bartolotta, who's the president of UTEC, Henry Broll from UTEC, and then we also have Haley Lenny from Macomb County in support of their project tonight. And I would like to invite Bill up to talk a little bit about UTEC and what this means to the company.
Thank you. Bill Bartolotta, president of UTEC. So in 2013, we started in Sterling Heights on Center Drive with 39,000 square feet and approximately 30 employees. Currently, we're at about 200,000 square feet and 130 employees. And through the years, in 3 buildings, and through the years, we've worked with the city on a couple of tax abatements in the past, similar to this. And the savings we received in those tax abatements, I know, has helped fund our growth, and it's allowed us to get to where we are. So definitely want to thank the city for the support through the years. It's been a really good relationship for us, and I wanted to open up if there was any questions for me.
Okay, thank you, Bill. I appreciate it. We're going to let the rest of the public speak, and then if we do have questions, we'll ask you during our deliberations, okay?
Okay, perfect. Thank
All
you.
right, thank you. Anything else, Mr. Bonner? Okay, then at this point, I will open the public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak under this public hearing? If not, I'll close the public hearing, and council, we need a motion.
Mayor Taylor,
Mrs. Sarowski.
resolved to adopt the resolution approving the application by Universal Tool Equipment and Controls Incorporated for an industrial facilities tax exemption certificate at 42540 R. Mancini Drive, parcel number 50-10-10-9-251-007 for a period of 9 years in accordance with the guidelines established by City Council, and the mayor and city clerk are hereby authorized to sign as applicable all documents required in conjunction with this approval.
Support. It's been moved and supported. Any discussion, Mrs. Sarowski?
Yes, I do have a couple of questions for the applicant. If Mr. Bortolotta could come back for just a second. Thank you, sir. Through the chair to Mr. Bortolotta. Mr. Bortolotta, I did read through all of this, but I have just, very interesting and probably minor question. It's the applicant is a certified woman-owned and ISO certified business. Who is the woman?
The woman is actually is my wife.
Okay. There you go. Just, no one was here present as a woman owner, and I was very curious about that. So congratulations to her. That means I'm going to ask the question. She does work in the company.
That's right.
Okay, very good. As a woman who works, I don't want to assume anything, but my mom worked in my dad's company, and they were co-owners, so I appreciate that. So thank you very much. That was my only question with that. So I appreciate your honesty and your openness. Thank you, sir. So other than that, thank you to Mr. Bortolotta and his wife for being in Sterling Heights. We love to see that our tax abatements are actually used to what we hope that they're being used for, is to grow a company, increase your tax revenue here in the city, but also to hire more people, keep that going, and it just generates business, it generates revenue, it generates everything good for the city. So other than that, I have no further questions, and I'm happy to approve this. So thank you, Mayor Taylor.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Sarowski. Anyone else, council? Thank you again. This is, as you mentioned, this is just the latest expansion, and it's good to hear that these abatements are working. They're helping you to grow, helping you to hire more people, and really interesting to hear where you started and where you are now. And best of luck to you and the company, and thank you again for investing in Sterling Heights and making Sterling Heights the place that you do business. So council, with no further discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Thank you again. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is an ordinance adoption, and this is to consider adoption of ordinances amending the City Code of Ordinances and zoning ordinance number 278 to permit and regulate hobby beekeeping within the city of Sterling Heights. We have a presentation from our city planner, Dr. Jake Parcell. Dr. Parcell.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. Actually, no presentation tonight with slides for SHTV, but I just wanted to update City Council on the changes we made to our hobby beekeeping ordinance following the last meeting. Following comments received from council at the introduction meeting, the planning department and city attorneys have reviewed the inspection provisions in your packet. This is section 8-54J, removing the language about entering a property without a warrant. We have changed this to be more in line with what Mr. Koszubski said at the past meeting, allowing it to be required on a case-by-case basis. With something like this, first and foremost, in a regulatory ordinance, we look at safety. If something happens with bees, or in that instance where we want to get on site and control the animals in order to provide safety for the residents of the house or adjacent neighbors if they're having an outdoor gathering, then we want to be able to enter and remediate that as soon as possible. I believe this language is more in line with what we've seen in other instances in our code of ordinances. And based on our verbiage here, we believe it is sufficient to justify immediate entry in these instances alone. Otherwise, it is unchanged. We took your feedback and worked to find an answer and solution in line with what we believe would be sufficient, and I'm open for any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Dr. Parcell, is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak on this item? If not, council, we need a motion.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Radke.
Suggestion number one, to adopt resolve to adopt the ordinance amending Chapter 8 of the City Code of Ordinances to permit and regulate hobby beekeeping within the city of Sterling Heights as amended.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Is there any discussion, Mr. Radke?
Yes, briefly, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm appreciative that the city attorney and the planning department reviewed this and eliminated provision J. I think that was a concern of some of the residents. I would like to make one further amendment to this ordinance. As I spoke about in the last meeting, I think 20 feet from the property line is almost excessive compared to what the other ordinances in other cities were. So I would move to amend section 54, I have it here, 854-3, a beehive must be at least 20 feet. I would change that to a beehive must be at least 10 feet from any property line, section 854-2. So I move to amend this ordinance.
I'll support. So it's been moved and supported to change from 20 feet to 10 feet. Before I give you the floor back, Mr. Koszybski, are there any other references throughout that you think would need to be updated? Assuming this amendment passes, would there be any other provisions within the ordinance?
The only, thank you, Mayor, the only one would be 3. So you have B2 and B3 both talk about the distance. One deals with 20 feet from any public sidewalk, trail, bike path, public right-of-way, recreation areas, parks, picnic grounds, things like that. You may want to keep that as a buffer. If you're going to amend number 2, that just deals with the property line.
Okay, I had in my notes 854-3 is what you said.
He corrected it to 2.
Okay, well, I can't write and think at the same, I can't write and listen at the same time.
Apologize.
Okay, so we're just talking about B2. Got it.
No, I have
Okay.
a comment.
Dr. Parsay.
In the same essence, on page 10, 29, subsection D, for multifamily, it says a beehive shall be no closer than 20 feet to any dwelling unit located on a parcel in RM1, RM2, RM3. This is essentially along the same line, so just wanted you to be aware of that setback as well.
Okay, and I'm looking at, that's 29A?
That is 29D.
D, sorry.
A deals with the same thing as the sidewalk and public area. The other one,
29A is like the same as 3.
yes.
Okay. So would we need to amend that as well? That would appear to have like a discrepancy in the,
There's no discrepancy caused by it, but along the same line of thinking Councilmember Radke has for number 2, that
got it,
follows.
because that's multifamily.
Yep.
Okay.
So just to be aware of it in case you wanted to make them both the same.
Well, I would further amend my motion to take 29D to 10 feet also, to make the rule 10 feet from the property line.
7, 8.
Okay, I'll support that, and my interpretation of what you did is that it's one motion to amend the ordinance as it's been presented, as it's been, so the amendment, there's one amendment, and it would cover both those provisions.
Correct.
Okay, any discussion, Mr. Radke?
Yes, just briefly, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate the effort that's gone into this ordinance, but after talking with several local beekeepers, and then talking to a friend of mine who I did not know had bees in Royal Oak, they all said that the 20-foot requirement would almost be excessive. They would have to move their hives in Royal Oak because they are closer than 10 feet. And further talking to the member of the Sustainability Commission that sent us that email earlier today, Mr. Smith, he felt that 10 feet would be more appropriate too. Because as long as you put the flyways in place, bees can range up to 2 miles away from the hives. So it's almost like 20 feet, 10 feet. But I want to make it residents available in their backyards to use this. The reason I'm asking for this change is simply because I think it creates a very small area where you can locate a hive in a backyard. I don't think honestly that we're going to have that many people ask for permits. This is like going to affect maybe 40 people in the entire city, I think. But I want to make it as easy as possible if they want to establish a hive in a safe manner to do so.
Okay. Council, any discussion on the amendment only at this point? Okay, no discussion. I'm going to support it. Ms. Riska, can we have a roll call vote on the amendment?
Councilman Radke?
Yes.
No.
Mrs. Sarowski?
Yes.
Mayor Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Yanis?
Yes.
Mrs. Yargo?
No.
Mrs. Kowski?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries 5-2. So the motion, the ordinance as it's been introduced has been amended. And we are back on the main motion, and Mr. Radke, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to reiterate, I appreciate the Sustainability Commission's diligence on this. I appreciate the Planning Department's diligence on this and the city attorney. This has not been an easy ordinance. It's been something outside of our wheelhouse, I feel like. But I think we've done everything we can to make an effective ordinance that will allow hobby beekeeping in Sterling Heights while also protecting the rights of our fellow residents. So I think this is a very good ordinance, and I'm very proud of the work that you guys do, so thank you so much. And I'm going to be proud to support this. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Radke. Council, anyone else? No. All right, then I won't either. So with no further discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Dr. Parcell, yes, we have the part two. So, Mr. Radke, do you want to take the second suggested action?
Resolved to adopt the ordinance amending zoning ordinance number 278 to permit hobby beekeeping in all zoning districts in accordance with city code regulations as an accessory use.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any discussion?
No.
Council, any discussion?
Just love the bees.
Yeah.
No further discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And now, thank you, Dr. Parcell and the Planning Department and all those who contributed to writing this, our legal and everyone else. So that will move on to the next item on our agenda tonight, which is the consent agenda. Is there anyone in the audience tonight who would like to speak on any item in tonight's consent agenda? If not, council, we need a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Mrs. Koski.
move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Support.
Been moved and supported with no discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is a consideration item, and this is to consider approval of an amended conditional rezoning agreement for property situated on the north side of 19 Mile Road, east of Shaner Road in Section 1, case number PZ24-0001. Another presentation from our city planner, Dr. Jake Parcell. Dr. Parcell.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor, members of council, Mr. Vanderpool, Mr. Koszybski. We have in front of you this evening an amendment to a conditional rezoning agreement that took place in 2008 for a property at 1390319 Mile. This is north of 19 Mile, east of Shaner Road. So a broad overview, the applicant is requesting an amendment to an existing conditional rezoning agreement. When approved by city council, it restricted restaurant uses in this rezoning agreement to C1. As you'll see, it's a split zoned parcel that was rezoned to R60 and C1. It's 3.4 acres in size, and the local convenience business district portion of it, the plaza alone, is 1.8 acres. It's also located in a traditional mixed use node. This was recommended approval by the Planning Commission, recommendation of approval shared by the Office of Planning. So here you see is the split zoned parcel as a result of the 2008 conditional rezoning. This portion here is dedicated, as you'll see in a moment, for 5 homes. This was rezoned for the plaza with a restriction in place that limited it to retail stores. Excluding restaurant is a permitted use. Although restaurants in the C1 zoning district are permitted as special approval land uses for carryout restaurants and for fast casual dining restaurants. So here's what the site looks like now in its full development. Located on the edge of the node, it is abutted by Run Family Residential and then additional shopping plazas. And here is what the future One Family Residential housing unit will hold for the site, which is why it was split zoned into R60 as well to finish out the cul-de-sac on Malaga Drive. So this came to our attention when the westernmost tenant here in the commercial unit, Shawarma Stop, was shutting down. They submitted a new restaurant called Grab and Go, submitted a use permit through the city clerk's office, which was sent to the Office of Planning for approval. We found at this time that on, I think, the last day of January, Shawarma Stop had closed, and Grab and Go filed their use permit on February 5th. At this time, when we get a use permit, we review the uses permitted. Through the conditional rezoning agreement we found here on our records, we were unable to approve this because this agreement restricted the restaurant use. It should be noted that despite the restriction here, prior to the current owner purchasing it, restaurants have been occupying this space since around 2010, when one was denied a SALU through the Planning Commission. Since that denial, 3 other restaurants have operated on site, none of which have received proper city approval through the clerk's office. However, since the city has not received any complaints of these restaurants, and since in underlying C1 zoning, restaurants are permitted use as a special approval land use, the Office of Planning supports that restaurants should be allowed as part of this rezoning. What we did work with the applicant after the Planning Commission meeting, and a huge thanks to our City Attorney's Office and Mr. Petruzak, is because this applicant had filed for their use permit already and was assuming that they were taking ownership from the shawarma stop without knowing that they were operating without a use permit. We drafted a temporary operating agreement for Grab and Go to operate until they received potential approval from the City Council. At that point, they're operating under the assumption, should this amendment not be passed, that they will not be able to operate on the site. How there were no use permits filed for this, we have really no record of. We worked with Ms. Riska and her team to dig into the history of this site. We have seen through Google Images and historical images that there are restaurants here, despite a denial from the one in Planning Commission. The one at Planning Commission, notably, was much different than the Grab and Go proposed to be here. They had an outdoor patio, they had a liquor license. This is just a fast, casual carry-out restaurant. So
A liquor license.
yes.
We violated it, they violated it.
We're working on this now that this is up in front of us to begin to, remedy this situation and bring it into compliance with this. When the applicant, Mr. Shahab, was purchasing this plaza, he was not notified that this conditional rezoning agreement existed. So we are trying our best to help the business that thought they were going in there legally to operate for the past 2 months, and also to work with the applicant to bring everything up to compliance. So with that, I'm open for questions. I know it has a long history, but we're working to kind of remedy what seems to be a strange coincidence within this conditional rezoning agreement, particularly because there's been no complaints or no nuisances found on site. So I'm open for questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Purcell. Mr. Shahab, any comment you want to make? You're under no obligation. If you have any comments that you do want to make, this would be the time. Okay. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak on this item? Council, we need a motion.
Mayor Taylor.
Mrs. Sarowski.
Resolved to approve the amended conditional rezoning agreement between the City of Sterling Heights and the Shihab Brothers LLC for the property situated on the north side of 19 Mile Road, just east of Shana Road, in Section 1, case number PZ24-0001, and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute the agreement on behalf of the city.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any discussion? Mrs. Sarowski?
Just briefly, through the chair to Mr. Vanderpool, well, yeah, we're going to go start there. And this is not about approving, this is more about just investigating. How long have restaurants been operating there? Or maybe do I need to go to Dr. Parcells? Is that a better option? Dr. Parcells, through the chair, how long have restaurants been operating at this location?
To the best of our knowledge, one began operation in 2010.
2010.
Following the Planning Commission denial. But I don't think we actually have ever had a valid use permit for one until Grab and Go started to follow the process through the clerk's office.
And since 2010, it's pretty much been restaurants there?
Yes.
And has it ever been a vacant site? It's been restaurant after
If
restaurant?
only for a minimal time while restaurants changed over.
Great, okay. And, well, I won't ask you this question. All right, so I honestly don't have a problem with approving this, going through the legal and appropriate channels and getting this rectified. Curious, I'm going to do maybe some investigating as to how things happened, but let's get this fixed. And that's my answer, let's get this fixed. So that's all I have, thank you.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Sarowski. Mr. Radke.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I too share some of the concerns of Mayor Pro Tem Sarowski. In reviewing this plan, both before the Planning Commission and to us, I've eaten at this location before. And it was a fully functioning restaurant, health approvals and everything. I would have, as a member of the public, never known that they did not have approval from us. Furthermore, I know that we're closing this loophole, but it has a drive-through window. And it's never been approved for drive-through use, which, you know, I think we're correcting some of the sins of the past here, but I think that this is yet another situation that's come before us, like the McDonald's, where someone was violating the zoning and planning ordinance for over a decade. And only when they try to do the right thing and come forward and like tell on themselves, do we realize that they've been violating our ordinances. And that's why I'm gonna support this. Because the business owner, I think, was trying to do the right thing by coming and registering his business. He had bought a business. To him, he thought, I'm just changing ownership of this business that I've bought. And then when he came to City Hall, it was like, you don't have a right to operate. And he's like, I just bought this business. And I really am frustrated that there obviously were people asleep at the switch in the planning and zoning departments in Sterling Heights before I got here. Because this is yet one more that's come before us that makes absolutely no sense. So I'm proud to support this. The food was fine when I ate there the last time. I'm sure the food is just fine now. But we really need to delve into our records and make sure that, like the hookah lounge, people are following the rules as they're required and not kind of this shoot from the hip system that we're discovering. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Radke. Anyone else?
Mayor Taylor?
Mrs. Schmidt?
Just briefly, first of all, I was reading the minutes from the Planning Commission meeting going, what? I mean, it's unbelievable, the chain of events that have occurred here. And I guess, I'm not sure who can answer this, Dr. Parcell, maybe. Did we do building inspections in 2010 and above?
So when it originally opened and received a use permit with the city, I think it was 2 city planners ago at this point, there were inspections completed for the use. Typically, things that go on after speaking with the building official, retiling or repainting or replacing countertop services doesn't trigger the need for a building permit because it's a small enough change. So we found that out when speaking with this restaurant applicant. We had our building official go out there and just make sure that nothing triggered the need for a permit while we were working through the temporary use permit. He just refurbished the inside. And
So a stove and an oven wouldn't be a trigger?
they were included when the or when they were reviewed the building permit back in 2010 or 11 for the first restaurant.
When it was already deemed not allowed?
Yes.
How did it get approved?
Okay,
I don't know.
okay. I'm glad we're righting the ship.
Yeah.
And furthermore, this stipulates no drive-through, correct?
This does. The drive-through window, the best we could interpret is that you see them in other C1 plazas in the city, Viceroy Plaza being one, where it was a pharmacy that has a drive-up window for pharmacies, but C1 doesn't allow for drive-through restaurants. So, and then also for anything else with the temporary use permit, we went to the county health department. We called them to make sure they were good to operate since April. We had Mr. Bayer, our building official, go out. So we've back-checked everything else to remedy this the best we can and help the current restaurant owner get in there as soon as possible, because we agree that this was a bit of an egregious,
And who approved the liquor license?
The liquor license was the one that was denied. The planning commission denied the restaurant with the liquor license. Something else took over after there that I don't believe had a liquor license.
But we're serving alcohol?
No, they weren't.
Oh,
It
okay.
was just, yeah.
Okay.
Seemingly, I guess they originally thought scaling back for no patio and no liquor license meant they were okay to go.
Okay, all right. Thank you, I have nothing further.
Mrs. Zarko.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. Let's just back up one more time. Who did you say through the chair to to Dr. Parcell, who did you say denied the liquor license?
Planning commission.
They don't have the authority to deny a liquor license.
They denied the restaurant use. So
would
a
have had a liquor
restaurant in 2010, a restaurant with a liquor license and patio came to planning commission. They were denied. At that point, a building permit was filed through the Office of Building, and it was reviewed by the planner here in 2010 and the building official in 2010, And then that was approved without going back to planning commission.
Okay, just when I think that I understand this, something comes up to that, it's like, okay, I think that we do need to make this right. It should be pretty simple, and I wish the new owners, the best of luck. I really do, and. Thanks for doing that. Are we blocking off the drive-through window? Is that something that you will know will not be used?
We're not removing it, no, we just have the stipulation in here that it shall not be used.
Because it could. Did anybody ever use the drive-through window?
I am unaware.
Ask the owner if you want.
Okay, yeah, so.
No, I will say,
So we told them they can't use the drive-through window. That should really work.
After all this, you think it doesn't matter?
We mean it this time.
This is like,
Yeah.
okay.
no, I will say though that your thoughts are right in line with the Office of Planning. So we are working with the GIS team out of IT. We're backlogging and scanning every document that has been recorded in properties in the city and uploading them into data files in our maps. So now we can start to backlog and go through and check compliance and check and make sure that we are upholding them to these things that were approved 15, 16 years ago that are not scanned in or entered into our BSNA system. So we're working really hard with the team in IT to try and find a way to remedy this. They don't know it yet, but our interns this summer will be a good help in scanning because there's about 6 folders or 6 rows in a binder shelf that your planners have already been scanning for the last year and a half. So it's a huge project, and this is just one that we felt the need that we need to remedy, very quickly to help this new business owner.
Okay, this is rare that this would happen, but we all know that there was a banquet hall that was running in the city that we didn't know was there either. So if I would ask the community, if you know of something that you think is irregular, should let us know so that we could look it up so that this doesn't happen again. So, nothing further.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Zarco. Mrs. Koski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through the chair to Dr. Purcell. You talked about updating information. IT was going to do that. Does that have to do with the business registration? Does that work together? Remember how we were having all our businesses register? Will that help? Will that be part of it?
It's not included at this time. Most of what it is just helping ease of information access for the planning team to know what legal agreements have been approved by city councils of the past. Because we have consent judgments that are several hundred pages long now that are from, 1974. And for us to have knowledge of all of those without being able to pull something up in our BSNA system or on a map and actually be able to sit down and show our applicants where they are is incredibly difficult sometimes. Especially when not even, sometimes the business owners are aware of these things happening. So we need to probably work with the clerk's office following that. But our first step right now is to scan everything in and link it to all of our maps so that we have a firmly documented record of this.
But are we going to continue with the business registration? Is that any help?
Yeah, we have been working really well with Ms. Riska on that and having planning review use permits as well. So that helps us actually trigger a lot of things like if we see a sign permit come in through building, but we see a use permit come in through planning, then we know, sometimes someone's trying to change a use or open a new business without us knowing. So working with the clerk's office and the building, office of building has been really helpful in this process. So yeah, we will continue that.
Well, if you need any help with the names of the developers that got their consent judgments, just ask me.
I'll take you up on that. Thank you.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Koski. So, Dr. Purcell, if you know, back in 2010, so the way it was described, as I understand it, is that the restaurant was not permitted in the strip center, and the prior owner or prior operator came to the Planning Commission in 2010 with a special approval land use request to operate a restaurant with a liquor license, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, they were denied.
Yes.
And then do you know when a building permit was granted for the restaurant use?
I believe it was in 2011.
Okay, and what does that really entail? Like if had the SALU been approved, would they still need to come and get a permit for whatever building that they were going to be doing? And was that just the build-out work and the interior?
Yes.
Okay. Does our building department really care about, that's not a great way of saying it. Let me give you an example. A few years ago, might have been, I think it was pre-pandemic, so probably at least 5 years ago, a resident comes to me and he says, Mayor, I built this pigeon coop in my backyard. And it was big, like almost like the size of a house. It was 700 square feet or something like that. The massive pigeon coop, and enough to hold over 1,000 pigeons in it. And he had spent considerable amount of money, $60,000 or something, and he was given approval by the building department to build this, this souped-up shed in his backyard. And then he started, putting pigeons in it, and then the neighbors complained, and code enforcement came out, and they said, well, you can't have a pigeon coop in your backyard. And he says, well, of course I can. I got the approval, I got the permit from the building department. And it seemed like what happened was the building department is getting a request for plans and looks at the plans and says, okay, but they're not really necessarily, maybe at the time they didn't think it's our obligation to investigate what this use is and make sure that the use is permitted on this property. And you could probably think of extreme examples, like if you had a residential property, a vacant lot in a residential area, and they came with plans, to build, put a factory there. I think that would get red flagged pretty quickly. This one might have just been one that slipped through the cracks. So maybe it's, if you can answer it, you can, or maybe Mr. Vanderpool, what controls are being put in place to ensure that when somebody goes to the building department and asks for a permit to build, that they're cross-referenced against the zoning to make sure that it's appropriate for the zoning?
Yeah, so when our front office staff intakes a building permit now, we have more checks and balances in place to work with the BSNA system, and it pings me every time a building permit comes in. What I do then is I review it myself, or I distribute it to Mr. Keenan or Ms. Richards or Mr. Fox. And if it's an interior build out, it's most of the time very easy renovation, things like that. But we go through and we look at the use, we look at the underlying zoning, and then we just look at the size and scale of it very generally and basically, and then approve it. And then the building permit can't be issued until planning reviews it. So Mr. Fox in particular is a superstar at working through the building permits very efficiently and bringing it up to Mr. Keenan or myself if he has any strange inconsistencies or something like that. So now we have planning staff that looks at every building permit. We get use permits from the clerk's office, and we look at those as well. For things like a change from restaurant to restaurant that may not require an interior building permit or build out or anything like that. So we have check and balance like that, and no building permits will be issued unless Office of Planning checks off on them. And if we take too long, then one of our front staff workers or Mr. Bayer comes over and knocks on my door and makes sure we do it that day. So we have a check and balance system right now interdepartmentally between the city clerk and building, planning, fire, engineering, that we can't physically issue them, or I guess virtually issue them now, unless all of our approvals are in the system. So we work through them pretty methodically and pretty frequently now for everything, I think, except for single-family homes and single-family zoning districts, because the Office of Building handles those on their own.
Okay, all right, very good. I think we'd notice if a single-family home showed up in a manufacturing or industrial zone property, but maybe not. Okay,
Mayor
Mrs.
Taylor,
Schmidt.
just real quick, through the chair to Mr. Vanderpool. Mr. Vanderpool, I'm going to request that when this investigation is done, that council be given a follow-up report, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilwoman Schmidt, we're happy to do that and provide additional information. I'm not sure that the follow-up investigation, that's a little confusing. The action you're taking tonight is rectifying all this. And let me just say that we have over 4,000 businesses in the city. And probably in your tenure here and mine, this is probably the first case where, something has been this complicated that, didn't happen. So, as Dr. Parcell mentioned, we do have safeguards in place now that require a lot of automated cross-checking. Our BSNA software now is used against many platforms, our fire inspections, our electrical inspections, plumbing inspections, other inspections that we do. In addition, engineering is also part of that entire process, a civil engineering inspection. So that is all highly automated now. And you may recall, too, that the city council took action with our business licensing system, which is now highly automated. And businesses now cannot get a certificate of occupancy without validating that they also have a business license. So there's a lot of cross-checking that now goes on. But if you would like additional information on this case, we're happy to provide that as well.
Mayor Taylor?
Mrs. Zarko.
Okay, just to add on to that, not so much for this investigation, but if we know of a denial at the Planning Commission, and it might be a good idea to go to that site, after the denial to make sure that this doesn't happen again. So if that's something that we could consider in the future, I think would be helpful.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. We can
Okay.
work with the code enforcement team on that.
Mr. Radke.
Just briefly, Mr. Mayor, to piggyback on Councilwoman Schmidt's comments, this is now at least the third or fourth instance of this happening that was come to our attention recently.
True.
We had the I forget the name of it, but the hookah lounge. We had the McDonald's. We had the shawarma stop. And when I first got elected, we realized that Jode Point had no trees, which is a violation of the then tree ordinance. I'm a little bit frustrated because it's not your fault, Dr. Parcell. You're solving the problem. But I wonder about who was monitoring previous staff, because it seems to me that there's been some significant oversights in the planning department that are coming to light now that existed 10 years previous. That's frustrating to me. So I hope we can solve that. And I know we can't hold anyone to account because they probably don't work here anymore, but it's screaming out to me for oversight, because it's highly frustrating that we now have a hookah lounge in the city that established itself because they claim that we gave them permits without any zoning or any rules, because people who were here before you were obviously asleep at the switch, which is very frustrating to me. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Radke. Without any further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. All right, next up is another consideration item, and this is to consider adoption of a resolution extending the moratorium in overlay districts and North Van Dyke Corridor District on approval of a new or reopening of a closed car wash or drive-through through December 31st, 2024, with a presentation by our city planner, Dr. Jake Parcell.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So this is one of two relatively similar agenda items back to back. So I have one general presentation here that I'll pause halfway through and then pick up on at the next agenda item. But essentially, if you remember, at June 6, 2023, City Council adopted a resolution instituting a moratorium on our overlay districts and our North Van Dyke area of the city. This is for, as the mayor stated, the approval of a new or reopening of a closed car wash or drive-through use through May 31st, 2024. At this time, we are recommending the adoption of the resolution extending the moratorium through December 31st. This extension of 6 months, we believe, provides the Office of Planning time for our scheduled master land use plan rewrite opportunities with the city, mostly our June 10th open house, which will have mapping and interactive options for reviewing these overlay districts, which will provide data for our August supplemental planning commission meeting, focusing entirely on nodes and corridors. Throughout this time, we'll be implementing a GIS mapping tool on the website where people will actually be able to go in, zoom in parcel to parcel, and leave recommendations on areas of the city based on what they want to see and what direction they want to see the master land use plan move forward, and also allow staff to continue our work with the city attorney's office to draft amendments to our overlay district ordinances First of which is being brought to the Planning Commission in June, on June 12th. One that it is focusing on the Van Dyke Mixed Use District, one of which all property owners and property addresses in the district were notified of from the Office of Planning last Wednesday. To provide some type of idea of what we're working with here with our overlays, which this moratorium explicitly is discussing. The blue hatching right here is our Van Dyke Mixed Use District. The red speckles throughout are our traditional mixed use nodes. The black hatching here is the Mound Road Innovation Support District, and this is our Lakeside Village District. At this time, in the past year, or I guess 11 months, the Office of Planning has received 13 inquiries for drive-throughs and car washes. We have currently operating in the city, as we have found through our maps and our research, 15 operating car washes at this time, and even more drive-throughs. We have, I believe, 26 drive-throughs on Van Dyke Avenue alone from 14 to 18 Mile. This includes auto service shops, car washes, fast food restaurants, and banks that are primarily drive-through focused. Our concern here with receiving these calls is that these are different types of uses that incur more traffic. They are more auto-centric in their base. And with these overlays calling for the cohesion of pedestrian walkways and automotive safety that keeps people safe as they move throughout our developments, that the increase of these types of uses proliferating at the rate that they are will lead to will have ill effects on some of our highest priority redevelopment areas. You've seen through recent projects discussion of making sure that the projects done along Van Dyke and Mound Road are thoughtful, very well designed, and have taken hundreds of hours from the planning staff and planning commission to bring to fruition. And we believe that the moratorium extension allows for us time to take real input from the community through our master land use process and provide it for thoughtful or to create thoughtful ordinance amendments. Things that we took into consideration when looking at this so far and recommending the extension of the moratorium is how will additional drive-throughs interact in these overlays. Things like a Chick-fil-A fast food restaurant not currently located in the city of Sterling Heights does approximately 70 cars per hour and 170 cars per hour on a peak weekend. Mr. Keenan, in his experience, has shown site plans where they have up to 100 stacking spaces on a single site for a drive-through. So we're looking at an additional 1,000 to 1,400 trips for an automobile at a drive-through use per day along these corridors. This is concerning when we're calling for in our ordinance the pedestrian walkways, pedestrian linkages, in certain plazas here already that do have drive-throughs, as Councilmember Radke has shown examples of for us to follow up on. There are walkways that lead directly into drive-throughs that developers have created that are creating unsafe environments at this time already that we have to remedy. There are issues concerning the space and the number of curb cuts and drive-throughs that would be adjacent to each other. Things that come to mind are the Taco Bell and the Jimmy John's and Starbucks that are located on Van Dyke in front of Meyer. Other things going into the outlot that are drive-through based next to the Panda Express, creating even more traffic on the Circle Road that go through in front of the Meyer, which can lead to potential accidents. So until we're able to get these different types of public engagement efforts done and review our ordinances based on what we find, we do believe that this would be the best course of action. We also would like to note that, as you'll see in the next part of the presentation, but also with some of these, a lot of these, particularly our traditional mixed-use nodes, directly abut residential. A lot of drive-through uses, restaurants in particular, are a nuisance for many people because of smell, noise, different types of volume emitted from loudspeakers for hours of operation that exceeds some people's bedtimes. One that had a survey petition of over 100 residents nearby in opposition of it was one the Planning Commission denied at 15 Mile in Dodge Park, was a Savvy Sliders on the south side of it. And it was a formerly vacant building now being transformed into a locally owned jewelry store that we believe will help further increase traffic at general business hours in that district. Other ones include the Mound Road McDonald's, which had issues with the loudspeaker, which was capped by the consent judgment to make sure it wasn't a nuisance to adjacent property owners. Other ones, like 15 in Shaner's planned unit development proposal that was brought before council, explicitly restricted drive-throughs because we were cautious about the amount of traffic it would create to adjacent businesses and to the residences there. Projects like the Wedge up at Hall and Starrett, is you'll see in the next presentation as well, have had drive-throughs proposed at them that were greatly opposed by the residences. Until we're able to come forward with different types of recommendations in our ordinance that more accurately reflect what we find the public wants to see and what our planning process research into best practices show, we think that this is the best course of action for safekeeping of these development areas. Additionally, we have a lot of concern about pharmacies and drugstores. This is difficult to see because this is a very large map of a very large city, but the blue area is our C3 zoning districts, the green area is our C1 zoning districts. As we've seen in different cities in Macomb County, St. Clair Shores, and Roseville, these pharmacies and drugstores, CVS and Rite Aids, are going out of business. What is happening is on these prime redevelopment corners, you see here on 18 Mile, and I believe that's Ryan and DeQuinder, what is happening is they are being taken over by drive-throughs because they are already have the facility in place to have the drive-through window at the old pharmacy. What then happens is we have a large building that is unused on a prime development corner. The parking is unused. People just filter in and out of the drive-through, creating traffic problems, which is a concern of the Office of Planning if we don't have safeguards to protect for the changing market conditions of what's happening with these mid-sized pharmacy stores that are struggling in the current economy. This is a map of them throughout the city. You'll see them up here near Hall and Shaner, where we've already had cited traffic concerns from council and from the police department. We have one directly in the North Van Dyke area, which is very centrally located at the very corner, calling for, in the North Van Dyke master plan, higher density development. We have them along the Van Dyke mixed use corridor, and we have them placed directly next to residents in some of our traditional mixed use nodes. And what we don't want to replicate is this happening, what we've seen in other communities, where we're stuck with this large albatross of an empty development simply used for a drive-through purpose without anything in place for us to kind of provide guidance on what an actual high-functioning site should be. So with this, I will be open for questions, and Mr. Keenan is here as well. So please feel free to open it up to either of us, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Parcell. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak on this item? Council, we need a motion.
Mayor
Mr. Mayor.
Taylor?
I think Mrs. Zarko got it.
Resolve to adopt the resolution extending the moratorium in the overlay districts in North Van Dyke Corridor District on the approval of new or reopening of a closed car wash or drive-through use through December 31st, 2024, to afford city administration additional time to complete the research, drafting, and preparation of zoning ordinance text amendments and updating of the master land use plan.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any discussion, Mrs. Zarko?
Just a few questions that I have through the chair to Dr. Parcell.
Yeah.
Okay, so this would, if we decide that we're extending this moratorium, the pharmacies that are closing that had a drive-through, this would mean that whoever's moving in there, that the drive-through isn't grandfathered in. In other words, they'd have to go through how would they not get, I guess, a drive-through in the same location that there was one there for a period of time?
At the point in time when one would close, I will defer to Mr. Koszubski in case I do get this wrong, but I would believe that because this restricts the reopening of an existing drive-through, that change in use, unless a different pharmacy purchases it and reuses it without any interruption, would therefore render that null and void. So they would not be able to reopen the drive-through there. What we have seen in a lot of communities is complete, and what we have had proposed to us is an adaptive redevelopment of a corner into a higher functioning plaza, something more well-connected to the neighborhood. And the unfortunate reality is that designs like that take a lot more time and a lot more capital to execute than something that is going in there that is just there only to purchase it for the drive-through period. So at the time that that closes, they would not be able to open it. They may come in front of council to petition from relief from the moratorium, but at that point, that would be council's decision to review.
Okay, suppose, okay, some of the, now that we know that we don't need as much parking as we've, planned for in the past, and you have now maybe an outlot that can be created, I'm going to use the Myers parking lot because it's probably, there are so many restaurants that are going in there.
Yeah.
Does this mean that a new restaurant going in there, even though that particular area I don't think is in the overlay district, would they still, could we still restrict them from having a drive-through for whatever reason in those new outlots that become a building?
It is in the overlay district. So
It is?
Yes, in the new outlots, they would be prohibited from having a drive-through under this moratorium. That area in particular is of a lot of concern to the Office of Planning. A lot of those drive-throughs filter into the ring road there at the Meyer, leading to a lot of blind corners and a lot of potential accidents. I in particular drive Van Dyke and see a lot of accidents in front of there for people coming out, because I think there's 4 or 5 drive-throughs with the gas station in the middle. So until we can better work with these property owners to come up with some type of larger site control through the development process, then we would, have concerns about new drive-throughs going there. This doesn't prohibit it in anything that's not an overlay. So this covers places like the Forum at Gateways, where there are drive-throughs permitted by right, the northern portion of Mound Road, and different areas infilling across 19 Mile into Quinder, where we are seeing, a high encouragement for drive-throughs to, or a high level of interest from developers to open.
Okay, I'm glad you brought the map up. I guess my other, as I think about some of the other areas of the city that have all this extra parking, I think of 14 and Van Dyke. And is that something, I don't know how many drive-throughs we have in that area, but I think this is a good idea. We don't have to keep talking about it, but I think it's a good idea until we get the master land use plan in place, that we just continue, extend the moratorium. And I think that gives everybody an opportunity to know exactly what we're doing in the future. So definitely in favor of this.
Mr. Radke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I completely agree with my colleague, Mrs. Arco. I just wanted to add, one of the things that you missed about the problems with drive-throughs is just the car exhaust and tire particulate matter that idling cars, they pollute. And, I think about the McDonald's at 15 Mile and Van Dyke. You have homes almost all around it. And when cars are idling in that stacking spaces in that drive-through, almost all those windows face that drive-through. And I'm sure if I took a smog meter or an oxygen meter over there and just stood next to those drive-throughs, the people who live there are going to have ill health effects. I know I read a study that people who live adjacent to a major roadway like Van Dyke or Mound have a higher rate of cancer because of the exhaust that comes out of your car and because of the particulate matter that comes off the tires. It's a fact. People who live close to 696 have higher asthma rate. So if we want to make truly neighborhood-centric, pedestrian-accessible developments, we have to really think hard about the drive-throughs. And again, this is a moratorium for 6 months, and we're going to reapproach it once we rewrite the master plan. But one thing I wanted to add, I had not thought about I've thought long and hard about banks to drive-throughs, because I think former banks are turning into drive-through based businesses. But the pharmacy, like the one at 15 Mile and Dodge Park that's closing right now, that would be a perfect candidate for someone to swoop in there. The difference is that a pharmacy drive-through acts significantly different than a fast food business. Because a pharmacy, usually you've called your prescription in ahead of time. You're just going there to pick it up and move on. Whereas when you're ordering food and you're not leaving your vehicle, you're idling. And I guess I echo some of your severe concerns about large number of cars that are now stacking in a parking lot that was not designed for those spaces, like that Rite Aid that's closing. I think about the drive-throughs right there. So where would the cars? They'd stack out onto 15 Mile, or they'd stack out onto like the inner. And for the Meyer at 16 Mile and Van Dyke, there has to be some way to bring some of those outlots into a better control, whether they implement traffic control or we ask them to give us the ability to implement roadways there, because they basically have a double stack now. And I've seen those accidents. I saw a severe one where They had to overturn a car, which flipped over in front of the Sonic drive-through right there. But you have a lot of curb cuts and you have a lot of businesses in areas that we've talked about time and time again that are meant for pedestrians. And if we let these drive-through businesses continue to operate or continue to take over areas that they were not meant for, we are not going to have mixed-use districts. We might as well just abolish them. So I fully support this moratorium. I appreciate your presentation. I thought it was more informative than I expected. And I remember reading the packet and some of the details. I mean, you know, we have 15 car washes and something like 30 gas stations already in the city. And that to me is just an insane amount for a city of our size. So I have no qualms about continuing this moratorium, and I appreciate the hard work the planning department is doing on the new master plan. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Radke.
Mayor
Mrs.
Taylor,
Schmidt.
thank you. Through the chair to Dr. Purcell, my only question is 7 months long enough? I mean, should we do this for a year? You know, I'm just asking you the length of time that you really feel is adequate.
I would defer the length of time question to Mr. Koszybski. But I think that we should have a clear direction in a way to bring ordinances before you that reflect what we are finding through our master plan process by the end of the year. Our next step after adopting this master plan is a more comprehensive zoning ordinance amendment to broadly the entire text of the zoning ordinance. What we would like to have is our new overlay drafts that we bring before you be model ordinances that our new ordinance will then be based off of. So we will be kind of bringing these forward as we find this data and then using them to base the rest of our rewrite on. That's my plan, at least, and I'm confident that we have a very robust public engagement process that should yield this data for us that will help us find these best practices or create practices that other communities around us now view as best practices.
Okay, so 7 months for now is okay,
Yeah,
and we
but-
can always extend it if we need to.
Yeah.
Okay, I have nothing further.
Thank you, Mrs. Schmidt. Anyone else? Okay. What is the robust public participation process going to look like?
So, to date, we are on our second survey, which is our market survey, which sidebar I encourage everyone to take and have everyone take in the audience, because we have 258 responses and I want many more. But this is mostly meant on where you spend for groceries, what you desire in your community, what type of stores do you frequent, what do you have to leave the city of Sterling Heights to get, and what do you have to get to stay in the city of Sterling Heights to find. A lot of options in here based on what we see in the inquiries we get are that we have a plentiful amount of drive-throughs, car washes, and gas stations in the city already, and how are our ordinances addressing these land uses based on our market study. What's next?
Can you stop there?
Yep.
So are you saying that the responses that are coming back are indicating we have too many gas stations, too many car washes, too many drive-throughs, and the public is asking to limit those uses in some way?
That's not what the survey data is showing. That's what the existing conditions survey is showing us based on what we found so far.
What does that mean, the existing conditions survey?
So the Office of Planning with our consultants goes through and we look at what
Right,
is
okay, I got you.
existing.
But what about the public?
We don't have enough data for yielding any recommendations on that yet.
Because there's only 250. Okay.
Yep. So what we then have is our open house on June 10th. At this one, we have maps set up around focusing purely on land use and zoning, how these work together, what direction these will move forward on based on feedback from the community. This will be highly interactive. It will have maps. You'll be able to place pins, talk with staff, consultants, understand what overlays are, how they function, what land uses will be allowed, how we can evaluate projects in these areas. We then take this data and we create an online virtual map that will be on our website. People can then go enter specific information into this map. We will make it accessible and we will offer options for people in different languages or for people without computer access to work with the Office of Planning to do so. And then this will be available until August. where we'll have an entire educational session and supplemental meeting focusing on nodes and corridors, where Planning Commission will then begin to review all of this data that we found thus far. So we have three upcoming items, one virtual tool, one Planning Commission special meeting, and one community-wide open house for 3.5 hours at the community center to gather input and hopefully reach as many members of the community as we can.
Okay. I'd be surprised if the feedback aligns with what the city council has indicated as a stated goal. And it's just my own personal feeling, but I doubt that we're going to have many members of the public that say, I really don't want there to be a drive-through available to me in this area of the city. People like choices. People like the freedom to go inside or use the drive-through. People love drive-throughs. There's a reason why every single business owner is coming to us asking for a drive-through when it would be appropriate. So my sense is that robust public participation and public campaign to solicit feedback is not going to have the desired result of the public clamoring for fewer drive-throughs and fewer car washes. And it's okay, I think, if the city council says, look, we're going to lead on this issue. We're just going to lead on this issue. And we're going to say, this is what we see as the future of the city, and this is what we see as the optimal way to do this, and the best practice for developing our city moving forward is becoming less reliant on the automobile, more reliant on non-motorized transportation, more walkable, more densely populated areas where you can live, work, shop, et cetera. And I think there's a lot of reasons why leaders might do that, even if it's not something that the public is immediately clamoring for right now, because we're elected to do these jobs. So you might have the members of the public saying, I really want to do something about climate change. And that same member of the public would say, I really like that drive-through. It's very convenient and it's very good. And it's very inexpensive, relatively speaking. So those might be priorities that are seemingly at odds with each other. So I'm not saying we go against what the public wants. It's just that there's oftentimes trade-offs are involved. I'm not optimistic that the feedback is going to lead us in that direction. I should have watched the meeting from June of last year, but I feel like we're in this position today, and what we were told 12 months ago is we're going to put a pause on these uses. We're going to study this. We're going to go out to the public. We're going to get feedback. We're going to start developing the master plan, and 12 months from now, we're going to have a lot more data. Now we're hearing, well, just give us 7 more months. And I think what I'm also hearing, if I'm reading between the lines, is in 7 months, we won't be through that process, but we'll be far enough through it that we should be getting some good data that'll help us to come back with recommendations for what we should do. So this, to me, honestly sounds like step 1 of a multi-step extension of the moratorium. Meanwhile, you have businesses out there business owners, property owners who are looking for some level of certainty. What's going to happen? I would say, is 7 months enough time? I would say, is 3 months enough time? Is 2 months enough time? I would say, how about no? How about no extension of the moratorium? And then, let's get it done. Like, if we extend it 7 months, I know everybody's busy. Believe me, I know everybody is busy, and there's a lot of other projects that can be worked on. And I just think if we extend this 7 months and extend it another 6 months after that, and end up, the elephant in the room is next year's an election year, right? And things don't really get done as expeditiously during an election year. So I see this going out to 2026 before anything even gets done. And I just don't think that that's the message that I want to send to the business community, that, hey, we can't figure out what we're going to do here on a long-term basis, but we just need more and more and more time. Look, I'm going to vote no. I'm going to vote no. It's not to signal that I want to see a proliferation of auto-centric uses in these overlay districts. I'd like some finality on this, and frankly, I mean, I don't know what we've accomplished in the last 12 months, other than to tell business owners who have a good business model, who have the proper zoning, who own the property where they can build this use. You're just not going to do that, right? We're just not going to let you do that right now, and maybe we will in the future, maybe not. So it's asking a lot. It's asking a lot, and so again, I'm not opposed to seeing our master land use plan revised in a way that makes certain areas of the city more, less reliant on automobiles, less auto-centric, but I'm going to vote no. Because I don't agree with, I mean, we've done moratoriums in the past, but I don't remember ever extending one. And I think they're kind of, I don't know, I think they're kind of like not entirely fair to the business community. So we either have to make a change to our ordinance, or we have to decide what we're going to do in these nodes, or we just have to leave things the way they are. So those are my feelings. So,
Mayor Taylor?
Mrs. Sarowski.
Yeah, you didn't let us, you kind of jumped in before. There were a couple of us that were given an opportunity to speak, so I'm going to say a few things. So this is, correct me if I'm wrong, this is through the chair to Dr. Parcells. This is not a moratorium for the entire city. This is for the overlay districts. Is that correct? Through the chair to, so this is,
That is
okay,
correct.
so this is to the overlay districts. This is not through the entire city. Granted, overlay districts are unique pieces of property. They're usually in corners of major intersections, often unique and juicy pieces of property, for lack of a better way to put it. But this is not through the entire city. So this is not completely tying the hands of all the business, in my opinion, all the business owners. And it doesn't eliminate business. If someone wants to, has only a business view and a business model that they want to have drive-throughs or car washes, it doesn't say you can't ever have one in the city of Sterling Heights. Sterling Heights has closed those doors. So I don't see that as being saying no to the business owners just in these particular nodes where it is already very dense for those particular businesses. So I don't see that as the no to those businesses. So just I wanted to get that out there. So I'm still going to say no to the nodes and to continue the moratorium based on understanding that our people that we've hired have said that they don't have not been able to get the information out to us in a timely manner the time frame that they have needed, so that we can redraw that master land use plan that we have asked them to help us draw, and it is not ready to be done. So I would hate to think that we're going to redraw a master land use plan, first allow people to start putting things into a node in areas that we've said no to, and then we're going to redraw the master land use plan and then see that that's overdoing and overusing those corners again. So I think that that's a better way to do it. It's not letting things overpopulate and then having to redraw something and say no once things have started. I think that's just, we don't want to put the cart before the horse. So that's my thoughts on that. So thank you, Mayor Taylor, for allowing me that time.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Sarowski. Mrs. Konski, Mr. Yanis?
I'm fine.
Okay.
You're smiling, I just.
All right.
Mr. Mayor, just to help you out a little bit, we did moratoriums for shopping centers, which covered the whole city. And we were successful with that, get some control. So I see absolutely no problem with this whatsoever, because we're just doing the overlay districts in North Van Dyke. So I think we'll be fine.
Okay. Well, certainly a moratorium is successful at exercising control, and that was my point. All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Motion carries 6-1. Next item on our agenda tonight is a companion to this one, This is a consideration item, and this is to consider adoption of a resolution extending the moratorium in the city of Sterling Heights on approval to renovate, open a new, or reopen a closed gasoline self-service or service station through December 31st, 2024. The presentation from our city planner, Dr. Jake Parcell, taking over from where he left off on the last presentation. Dr. Parcell.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. This is a direct companion moratorium to the previous moratorium, although I will say, to the point made, this one does cover the entire city. This is a map of the current gas stations in the city of Sterling Heights. I will note there is one right about here that is the Kroger one that counts as a grocery store for some reason on our GIS, so that one is not marked with a star. However, there are 31 gas stations currently located in the city of Sterling Heights. This one is a bit more difficult of a moratorium when we look at how the city is serviced by these gasoline service stations. What we find in the past year is that the city has been focused highly on EVs and electric vehicle charging. We have implemented an EV master plan that is supposed to bring in, I believe, 8 chargers to the city, working with stakeholders in the region and statewide to provide alternative charging options for the advent of electric vehicles, something we don't anticipate slowing down much given the current state of the automotive industry. This is a very long process. It is a process that includes many stakeholders from DTE to private companies to the city of Sterling Heights, and something that we are not taking lightly when we examine how land use works in terms of our EV master plan and in terms of what we currently have with gas stations. What we have found with gas stations currently, though, for the last year that have been redeveloped or have been approved prior to the moratorium is that the land use that a gas station encompasses is no longer what it once was. You'll see at Hall and Shaner, 15 in Van Dyke, 15 in Ryan, large redevelopment into incredibly large stores. Mound in 19 is another one. They look significantly different. They house different items like restaurants. Some even have drive-throughs. And the fact of the matter is that the zoning ordinance is not prepared to look at these uses, how the current market trends are showing gas stations moving towards. A lot of these gas stations are laden with variances, special approvals from the Planning Commission, some of which having gone before boards and commissions 3 times because they are a type of store that is being dictated by market forces that is no longer the gas station of old. Throughout the past year, we have had 8 calls on gas stations in the city. A lot of these are reasons for the Office of Planning to have concern of this land use type. Again, I know this is very difficult to see, so what I'm going to do is zoom in for you on here so that you can see more clearly where they are, because again, the city is very large. But we have one here at Hall and Sterrett. We have more coming along Shaner. We have several on the eastern boundary of the city. Some right on very corners on Van Dyke Avenue that are adjacent to other gas stations, and other ones along Mound Road that are adjacent to other gas stations. What we have found is that in areas where gas stations are permitted to operate, such as our C1 and C3 zoning districts, that there is an oversaturation of these coming in, and the result of that is that they're moving towards primarily residential areas. Number 5 down here is completely designated in the current master land use plan as the lone commercial parcel that is completely abutting entirely single-family residences. Hall and Sterrett is another one that has had multiple gas station inquiries where the public has been vehemently opposed at public hearings to development on that piece of land. An issue with gas stations when we look at them is that essentially, once a gas station is established, you have a gas station there, and you have nothing but a gas station there. Gas stations have potential to create brownfields. They have potential for seeping underground storage tanks, bringing concern to how we operate these next to our residences, and concern for what could possibly be developed on the site in the future, should oversaturation prove to be true, and these business models seem to fail. Our concern is that we need to look at size requirements for these parcels. We need to look at their proximity to residences. If a large gas station that is built along a commercial corridor, similar to 15 in Van Dyke, or Hall and Shaner, which I don't disagree are fantastic looking rebuilds of older gas stations. But if they're built in the backyard of these residential homes and going through these processes, then we have something that stands out distinctly as something that could be considered a nuisance use. And what we want to do is protect our residences from different types of these uses from coming through before they even get to the public hearing phase where we see this opposition most frequently. So our recommendation is additionally extending this moratorium. Mr. Keenan in particular has been working on finding zoning ordinance language from comparable communities that keeps up to date with different types of gas stations that are requesting to come into the city of Sterling Heights. These gas stations, franchises largely not found in Michigan until recently, but are beginning to send applications in through the area, take up significant acreage, up to 2 acres in some instances. They've had proposals in cities like Fraser that have been denied, and Huntington Woods, Royal Oak that have been denied. And their uses that take up a substantial footprint with no regard to what the city has in line for our EV master plan, or what we may have in line for our undergoing master land use plan rewrite. In particular, I'll draw attention again to number 5, and I will zoom into it because I do know it is difficult to see. But this is a parcel that is solely the one commercial parcel completely around open space and single-family homes and subdivisions that are well-connected with a lot of retention and on-site water that, we have concern of a gas station going in on the sole parcel there because there really is no room for additional curb cuts there. There really is nothing there around 15 in Hayes. So based on our inquiries, based on what we're seeing in the market, largely in the Midwest, in the country at large, and based on us needing to get further along and working with these stakeholders to bring more EV charging options to the city of Sterling Heights, we are requesting that the moratorium be extended another 6 months on gas stations as well, as we bring ordinances forward to the Planning Commission for consideration. And I'm happy to bounce around slides, but there's the last one if you want to see it. And I open it up to the board. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Parcell. Anybody in the audience who'd like to speak on this item? All right, council, we need a motion.
Mayor Taylor,
Mrs. Sarowski.
resolve to adopt the resolution extending the moratorium in the overlay districts. Oh, wait, sorry, I got the wrong one. I apologize.
Yeah.
Yep, I know. I just hadn't changed my page. Apologize. Resolve to adopt the resolution extending the moratorium in the city of Sterling Heights on approval to renovate, open a new, or reopen a closed gas station, gasoline self-service or oh gosh, let me start over. It's been a day. Resolve to adopt the resolution extending the moratorium in the city of Sterling Heights on approval to renovate, open a new, or reopen a closed gasoline self-service or service station through December 31, 2024, to afford city administration additional time to research, draft, and present master plan and zoning ordinance text amendments and other pertinent regulations to govern such uses in the city.
Support.
Thank
Been
you.
moved and supported. Any discussion, Mrs. Sarowski?
No, it was described quite well, but, actually, I do. I have a question for Dr. Parcells. I lied. Sorry. So through the chair to Dr. Parcells, for the city of our size, what is the average number of gas stations throughout the state of Michigan? No, I lied, because there's not too many cities our size. Throughout the Midwest.
I don't have an answer for you at this time.
Not helpful.
East of the Mississippi.
East of the
East
Mississippi.
of the Mississippi. I don't.
What if we want quarters, Mark? Like,
I know, seriously. I'm trying to find, because we have 31,
Yeah.
and just trying to get a number, is that a lot? Is that a little? I find no problem finding a gas station every time I turn. On my way home from work, I can jump into one. If on my way to work, I can find a different one. So I don't even have to make a turn to get to one. In my opinion, I find it very easy to find gas. So I don't have an issue based on my travel patterns. I don't have one super close. Well, I do, actually. Well, the one closest to here is the closest one to my home. So I don't find it an issue in the city right now. It's not my family business. It's not something that I do, but I know other people do have that as their family business. I don't find it cumbersome, or I'm hoping it's not cumbersome to those that do, because I'm going to vote yes for this. But I don't want to completely close a city out for those that do run gas stations and convenience stores within those gas stations, because that is something that is important to people. A lot of people jump into their car and go get gas, go get milk, go get whatever they need to a gas station. So I'm willing to accommodate our Office of Planning for the 7 months so that we can get the master land use plan developed and voted on and at least go through. But I would not want to have a moratorium any longer than that. So that is my caveat. And only with the understanding that that's so we can get that land use plan done, and then we need to move forward so that the business owners can get their businesses if we want. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have more than 31. I'm just saying that we need to wait until we get that master land use plan done. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Sarowski. Mr. Radke?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I echo some of my colleague, Mayor Pro Tem Sarowski's thoughts. You know, in a city of 36 and a half square miles, we have 31 gas stations. I think that's a significant number. And a lot of the corners that have gas stations don't just have one gas station. They have a gas station on 2 corners or 3 corners. And, you know, I was trying to make a list in my head of all the gas stations that I regularly drive past when I enter the city. And I did not get to 31, but I think I got to 17 or 18, 19 on the regular. And I think fundamentally, the gas station business is changing. Because we're seeing it in the proposals that have come before the council. You know, you're seeing more of these large convenience stores. They have other businesses operating inside them, be it a towing business or, I know the one with 19 and Mound has a chicken restaurant. There's just changes to the business. And I'll be honest, I don't think our ordinance has taken into account these market changes as it stands right now. Because let's be honest, once a gas station comes onto a corner, as my family used to operate a gas station, once you have a gas station there, no one else wants to touch your parcel because they are afraid of future contamination concerns. We actually sold a car wash that had a gas station, so I'm familiar. My family was in the gas station and car wash business. And we got sued after we sold the gas station car wash. The gas station had been closed for years because there was contamination found on site. Now, we were later found not to be responsible. You know, we did not have to pay for it. But, you know, this is a concern of the site. And so after a gas station, it's like, what comes in there? A car wash or an auto change place. Someplace also that is not worried about contamination. Some of these businesses are not the best businesses for some of the prime shopping corners in our city. I think convenience stores are important. I think that you're going to see a lot more of those convenience stores in the future. But I think the Office of Planning and the Planning Commission will need to think hard about those standards and about how other cities apply those standards. I know, for example, on 16 Mile Road in Troy, they prevent any kind of drive-through use, for example, as part of their 16-mile corridor. And there are businesses that have come in there, not just gas stations, but businesses that have come in there that have told us to our faces, this body, there's no way I can operate without a drive-through or whatever process I have. Like Shake Shack. They have a Shake Shack without a drive-through, you know? So it's possible to really rethink some of these processes. And I think that this will give us enough time to really get a grasp of it, because I don't think the gasoline car is going away. And I think we're going to need gas stations in the future. But we should really think out about how large the sites need to be, what our setbacks should be. I mean, one problem we have with some of the open gas stations now is that whenever they come before us, we ask them to close some of their entrances because they are causing significant traffic hazards on the corners they exist in. I think about 15 Mile and Ryan, where those gas stations constantly caused accidents because of their multiple curb cuts. So I am comfortable giving the Office of Planning some time to rethink the gas stations. I think the 30 functioning gas stations in the city can supply the motoring public with their gasoline. And I think that, I hope that we can create a better ordinance that, because they're not really gas stations anymore, they're convenience stores. And they're just convenience stores with pumps outside to lure you in. So I think that we really need to regulate them more like convenience stores in some way than we are right now with gas stations. So I'm comfortable with this. I think, I agree with Mayor Pro Tem Sarowski. I'd be unlikely to extend this ordinance in the future. I think we're gonna give you enough time to finish your job, because I'd hate to stop it midstream. But once we get that finality, we really need to make a plan, because, again, my family operated a gas station. This was a family business, so I understand this very, very closely. At the same time, I can understand the future is gonna be much different. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Radke, Mrs. Zarko.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. Through the chair to Dr. Parcell. I guess if you don't have to answer me tonight, but if you could get back to us. Out of the 8 requests that we've had for gas stations through this moratorium, how many would actually require a rezoning on the site that they want to be on? That would be one thing. And then when you bring back this in December, if you could actually mark, like, it would be gas stations that are on the other side of the city limits. So that would be like Troy, Shelby, Fraser, Clinton Township, Warren, and what's on the other, across the street from us. The other thing is people now are buying their gas at some of these big stores like your Costco's and your Sam's because they're using membership cards. They get a discount on their gas. They get cash back if they're using one of their cards. So it's a different way of purchasing gasoline. So that's also something, to think about. But I don't have a problem with us postponing this until December the 31st. So I'll be in favor of this. Nothing further.
Have your answer. It's, so there were 3 of them that were requesting to do a conditional rezoning. There was one that was a larger part of a potential planned unit development, and there was 4 or 5 requests repetitively for citywide parcels, or the creation of new out parcels. No request that came in the past year was to revitalize or renovate an existing gas station. They were all to establish new ones.
Okay, thank you. Nothing further.
All right, council, anyone else? Yeah, I'm going to vote no on this one, too. There was discussion, Dr. Parcell, during your presentation about gas stations becoming too close to residential parcels. Can you expand on that? I mean, what is that concern based on?
First and foremost, historically, what we have seen at public hearings, even prior to me being here, reviewing video and minutes, looking at these uses when we get requests, are the amount of public opposition to some of these large site gas stations coming immediately adjacent to residences. A lot of inquiries for new businesses or new gas stations require or demand, in some instances, upwards of 2 acres for filling their site with the gas station. And historically, on some of the parcels outlined in this map right here, any proposed project there has significant opposition to the public, or from the public, to a development like that going there.
Can I stop you there?
Of course.
So these 8 sites, is it true that you were saying these are inquiries that were received in the last year?
Yes.
And, I mean, I thought the message to the development community and to the gas station community was like, don't bother, because we got a moratorium. They bothered anyways? Is that what you're saying?
We get calls, even on these same parcels, nearly weekly.
Right, and so you entertain those, you have those discussions with them, talk about what they would need to do?
Mm-hmm. We discuss our current requirements. We discuss options about what we have under the current moratorium and when the timeline is set for the current moratorium and what we're going through with the master planning process.
And, I mean, I thought you said that these are sites that, where there's pushback from the public, but how would you know that?
I've reviewed previous iterations of projects at these parcels that have had gas stations as a component of their, either planned unit development or rezoning.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not going to necessarily dispute that, and I don't think, just because, just this gas station moratorium is going to end at some point. It's either going to be tonight, or it's going to be, May 31st, or it's going to be December 31st, or in all likelihood, it's going to be sometime well out into 2025, which is what I think is the most likely scenario here. Probably after November of 2025. And so this is going to end at some point, and so the rubber's going to meet the road. I guess the gas stations are C3 uses that require a special approval land use, is that correct, or am I wrong?
C1 and C3.
C1 and C3, but they do require a special approval land use.
Yes.
So they're going to go to the planning commission no matter what. And if they need a conditional rezoning, or if it's part of a PUD, then it's going to come to the city council too, right? So, I mean, one of the things that I think, it's easy to say, hey, we've got 31 gas stations, and we got to put a pause on this because we don't want to have more. I don't know, the public is probably aware because the Macomb Daily writes about it, the News and the Free Press write about it. There are new dogs in town. There are new players in town that are coming and trying to establish a foothold in Metro Detroit and Michigan. And I don't know what that's going to mean for our market. I don't know what it's going to mean for our community, and I don't know what it's going to mean to the other gas stations here. But I think there's a realistic and a reasonable probability. I'm not saying it's greater than 50%, but I don't think it's insignificant either, that when you bring in a competitor, or when a competitor comes into the market that is doing something completely different than everything else, it could drive some of these gas stations away. So you could end up having fewer gas, by allowing gas stations to come in, you could have the effect of having fewer gas stations. Now, I'm not predicting that I'm not guaranteeing that by any means, but I think it's a realistic possibility, that the market is going to determine how many gas stations are necessary here. We can determine how many gas stations are necessary as a city council, but we're just 7 people just sort of thinking and making a decision, sort of at random. The market is millions and millions and millions upon millions of interactions happening simultaneously by thousands and thousands of people. It's like a supercomputer, okay? The market is going to figure it out. And so I just don't see why we postpone this another 7 months. I don't. We've had 12 months to figure it out. We've had 12 months to come up with a plan. Another 7 months. I mean, how close are we to having, are we going to have in 3 months something presented to the city council that says, this is what we're proposing you do about gas stations?
In 3 months?
Yeah.
Not likely.
No, not likely.
We have to go to planning commission first, and we're looking probably at July or August for that.
I'm just going to say, no, it don't work like that. Don't work like that. From what I can tell, I haven't seen anything in 12 months. And that's not to say that you guys haven't been working, but we haven't seen anything in 12 months. I view this as let's just keep punting this and kicking the can down the road. I'm not, it's not a way to do business. I'm not in favor of it. I don't think we need to postpone this any longer. I think gas stations know better than anybody about what's happening with electric vehicles. Gas stations know better than anybody. It's a direct threat to their business. It's an existential threat, or maybe it's not a threat at all, but they know. We just, I'm not feeding my family based on, owning a gas station and needing to have it be successful. They are. They know. So I'm ready for this moratorium to go away. It's time to get back to business. And if we're going to make a decision about developing the city in a different way, we got to make it now. So I'm voting no. And I think that's that. I don't think we need a roll call vote. So all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No. That's me. Motion carries 6-1. Next up on our agenda tonight is a consideration, and this is to consider nominations to the City of Sterling Heights boards and commissions. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak on this item? If not, we have a few items.
This is great, Mark.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we'll start with the Planning Commission. This is a mayoral appointment to terms ending June 30th, 2027. There are 3 members of the Planning Commission who are requesting reappointment. Those members are Jeffrey Garapi, Pashko Weekai, and Brandy Wright. I would respectfully request that the council member make a motion to nominate all 3 of those members to terms ending June 30th, 2027.
Mayor Taylor.
Mrs. Sarowski.
Resolved to nominate Jeffrey Garapi, Pashko Weekai, and Brandy Wright for consideration as appointees to the Planning Commission at the June 4th, 2024 regular city council meeting.
Support.
Been moved in.
I have one question, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Mr. Radke.
Does anyone on council object to us taking all 3 at the same time? No, no problem then. I support.
Are the terms the same?
Terms are the same. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any other discussion? No, Mr. Radke.
They're tremendous members of the Planning Commission, and we appreciate their hard work, and I'm proud to reappoint them.
This is a good class. No further discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Next is the Board of Ordinance Appeals 1. There are 2 members seeking reappointment, Robert Irvin and Julie Hoff-Windhorst. These are city council appointments to terms ending June 30th, 2027. Is there anybody who would like to make those nominations?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Radke.
resolved to nominate Robert Irvin and Julie Hoff-Windhorst for consideration as an appointee to the Board of Ordinance Appeals 1 at the June 4th, 2024 regular city council meeting.
Support.
Been moved and supported. Any discussion?
They serve, they've done a great job. We appreciate all the hard work they do. We see the ones that they can't deal with, so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
Council, anyone else? No further discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Next is the Board of Ordinance Appeals 2. There are 2 members seeking reappointment. There is 1 opening, and this is an alternative seat. The alternate has a term ending June 30th, 2026. The 2 other members, Michael Stickney and Stephen Weekai, are seeking reappointment to terms ending June 30th, 2027. I would imagine we could potentially do the 2 reappointments in one and the opening in a second. Is there anyone who'd like to make a motion?
Mayor Taylor.
Mrs. Sarowski.
For the nominations to Board of Ordinance Appeals 2, resolved to nominate Michael Stickney and Stephen Weekai for consideration as appointees to the Board of Ordinance Appeals 2 at the June 4th, 2024 regular city council meeting.
Support.
Been moved and supported. Is there any discussion?
As has been stated before, we appreciate their service. These guys are great, and I'm glad to have them back to be nominated.
All right, council, anyone else? No further discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Next up is the Board of Review.
Oh, the
Wait.
alternate.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Sorry,
Mr.
Mayor.
We jumped, yeah.
Yeah, I was like right off my screen. Okay, Board of Ordinance Appeal 2, the open alternate position. This is a council appointment to a term ending June 30th, 2026. Is there anyone who has a, Mr. Radke?
Resolved to resolve to nominate Lillian Jacobs for consideration as appointed to the Board of Ordinance Appeals 2 alternate, right?
Yep.
At the June 4th, 2024 regular city council meeting.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any discussion?
Yes, I spoke with Ms. Jacobs. She's a member of African American Coalition, and they are encouraging their members to apply for more boards and commissions. And this is one that stuck out to me because it's an opening. So I'd love to get those members on more of our boards and commissions, so I'm happy to make this nomination.
All right, very well. Anybody else? No further discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Next up is the Board of Review. This is city council appointment. There are 2 members seeking reappointment, and they are both seeking terms that end in June 30th, 2027. Is there anyone who'd like to make a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Yanes.
resolved to nominate John Hages and Patrick Rye for consideration as an appointee to the Board of Review at the June 4th, 2024 regular city council meeting.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Is there any discussion?
No, I know they've both been working diligently, and they care a lot about their position on the Board of Review, and they do a great job.
Okay, thank you. Council, anyone else? No further discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next up is the Zoning Board of Appeals. There are two members seeking reappointment. These are city council appointments to terms ending June 30th, 2027. Is there a motion?
Mayor Taylor.
Mrs. Sarowski.
Resolved to nominate Derek D'Angelo and Pashko Weekai for consideration as appointees to the Zoning Board of Appeals at the June 4th, 2024 regular city council meeting.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Is there any discussion?
All these guys are very dedicated, and I think they are going to be great, and we should reappoint them. So I'm happy to nominate them.
Okay, council, anyone else?
Just like to add, Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Radke.
they both have served as chair of this commission, and they've done a lot of work on it, so I appreciate their hard work.
Absolutely. Council, anyone else? With no further discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, that completes that portion of our agenda, and we will move on to communications from citizens. This is an opportunity for anybody in the audience to speak on any items not on tonight's agenda. Is there anyone who'd like to speak? Yes, sir? Absolutely. You can come to the podium. You'll have 4 minutes to talk. The green light will be on when you have up to 1 minute left. For your last minute, it'll turn yellow, and then when your time is up, it'll turn red, and I just ask that you wrap up your comments as quickly as you could once it does turn red. Okay? Thank you. Go ahead.
Good evening. My name's Jason Varela in that. I live at 5246 Shrub Oak. I received a notice of violation, Echo 24-04461, regarding a vehicle and regarding landscaping. The complaint was filed on May 8th. I strongly believe it was done by my ex-wife, the same person who filed multiple 38 Macomb County false reports against me, same person who filed multiple Sterling Heights false reports with me, and also put a tracking device in my vehicle, which Detective Kreiner from Sterling Heights came back and found her. Macomb County prosecutor refused to charge her with any charges in that. Now she called in an ordinance violation. On May 7th, it rained that day. On May 8th, when she called in for the violation in that, the grass was still wet, so I couldn't cut my grass. May 9th, it rained again. Right here, for the weather. Ordinance violation right here. My question is, I have a no trespassing sign on my property. And the person from the city, Mark Schmidt, he walked onto my property in that. And right here, according to the ordinance right here, 46-3-3-18-18, right of entry. If a building is not secured as required by the division of the city, has a security to the property in the city, or a contract agent may enter or re-enter the building to conduct inspection to assume compliance with the requirement of the division, if determined. If there are any emergency hazard or health conditions that require demonstration and correction to conditions, or out of complaints, with the requirement of division of constitute emergency or hazard, health and safety conditions. Well, there's no health and safety hazard conditions, so he trespassed on my property, which violates Michigan Criminal Code. And I have a reason for that, and I'm very displeased that they think, and this is the second person from your, out there in that, for your code enforcement, that thinks it's appropriate, you're allowed to walk on my property. This is my grass right here. By this tree, I had one time in that had lilies out there, and the lilies died down because the weather changed. We had weird weather change. And as you can see in the picture in that, right here, there's a no trespassing sign right here, posted. And the city employee decided to trespass on my property. And then all my vehicles are parked military style, which are backed up to the house and residence. He came up, looked at my plate, and said, my plate's expired. How is he looking at my plate without trespassing on my property? Number two, the plate's not expired until July. It's not July yet. And he complained about my vehicle being, plate being unregistered. It is registered with the city on that. And it is registered with the state. So I have until July to renew the tabs. So I don't understand that. Why is he trespassing on my property? Why is he violating Michigan Criminal Code? And why does he think it's okay? And I already explained to him the situation in that, but he didn't want to hear me out. So not only did he violate my rights, but he also violated my Fourth Amendment rights, a constitutional right. The Fourth Amendment of the United States Constitution provides the right of the people to be secured in their home, person, paper and effects against unreasonable search and seizure shall not be violated, and no warrant shall be issued based upon cause supported by the oath affirmed, practicing described, the place and the search, and the person or things to be seized. Why is he entering my property when there's no trespassing signs posted? That is my concern. And I explained to him, this is all harassment. If you like copies of this right here is from Macomb County Sheriff right here, showing that she made 38 phone calls complaining about me. This is City of Sterling Heights right here, multiple complaints and wellness checks that she sent to my property. So I would like to know, how would you like to address this issue with city employees thinking that it's okay to violate my Fourth Amendment constitutional rights of trespassing on my property?
Okay, thank you, sir.
How would you like to address that?
So during communications from citizens, citizens communicate and we sit and listen. We don't
Okay.
engage in back and forth. This is not the right
No,
time.
I get you. All right.
Okay, so if you want to leave your phone number with the clerk,
Oh, I will.
she can circulate that to the city manager and the rest of council, but, and then we'll have an opportunity to respond at the end of the meeting, and members can choose to respond or not respond, but we don't go back and forth right now.
Okay.
All right, is there anyone else who'd like to speak under communications from citizens? Not, I'll close that portion, and we'll go on to reports from city administration. Anything tonight, Mr. Vanderpool?
Mayor, as you indicated, we'd be happy to follow up with the resident who just spoke about the code violations, and we'll have our city attorney and our city development director elaborate with him further on the questions he posed and provide him appropriate responses. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Koszybski, anything tonight?
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
All right, council, I'll open it up for any reports or new business. Who'd like to go first?
Mayor Taylor?
Mrs. Schmidt.
Thank you. Through the chair to Dr. Parcell, since you're still here, if I could ask you a question.
Don't go anywhere, Dr. Parcell.
Hopefully you have the answer. I'm not sure you do. I've gotten inquiries about the halt of construction of the mosque. Do we have an update on what their status is, or are they going, it's really come to a halt over there?
May I ask what mosque?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm 15 Mile.
BAIC. I don't have the most recent update because we didn't have, I haven't had a chance to catch up with buildings since I just got back today in office. We have discussed this at our business development meeting, which is held monthly on Tuesdays. I believe our last update last month was workers were on site, footings were installed, and inspections were completed by the city, and they were progressing through there. I do know with development of this type of religious institutions, it does take time based on how they are funded. But I am more than happy to work with Mr. Bayer and see where the inspection status is, and then get Mr. Vanderpool an update to City Council as soon as I can.
That'd be great, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
I have nothing further, Mayor.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Schmidt. You know, when he said that the building hasn't spoken with planning yet, I was having flashbacks to a couple items ago. No, you didn't say it, he did. He's like, he said, I haven't talked to planning yet, and I'm like, well, wait a second.
You are planning, aren't you?
No, I'm sorry, I thought he said he was out and he hadn't talked to building yet, and I said, I thought we're getting better communication there, but
All
no,
right.
he clarified it very well. All right, council, anyone else?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Radke.
briefly, I spoke with Development Director Castor today about some things I've noticed, especially when projects are coming before the Planning Commission. And one thing I've noticed is that a lot of the, especially the mixed-use projects or the PUDs that are coming before planning, you know, they're still subscribing to our old parking model, which we've all agreed is not functional. So I guess through the chair to Dr. Parcell, do we have an update on when we might update our parking ordinance to better reflect the realities we all know exist on the ground?
At this time, we have put parking in with kind of the broad update of our overall zoning ordinance. The problem with addressing parking prematurely is that the root of all zoning ordinance is the intent of the ordinance, and then, to me at least, what the definitions are. You'll see in our ordinance, there are definitions that are woefully out of date, like discotheques, things like that don't really exist as uses anymore, at least called by that name, or at least not that I go to. But what we have then is a need to update every individual use under every individual classification. And while it is cumbersome, we need to, as we talked about tonight with a lot of changes in the market, update all of our definitions first, update the uses allowed then in underlying zoning districts, and then update the use standards they abide by. So with a lift like that, it's much more substantial than making a change to a certain overlay, to a certain use type, to adding an accessory use. It's broad and encompassing in the city, and if we don't get it right, then we're ending up at the ZBA or with PUDs or conditional rezonings here month after month after month. So we're enveloping that into an overall zoning ordinance rewrite that hopefully brings everything up to, current day standards, definitions, and best practices.
What is your ETA on that part of the rewrite?
The rewrite of the zoning ordinance overall is what we will do after the master plan is adopted. My ideal goal then is to bring forth to council a comprehensive rewrite of a draft of an ordinance. There's sections in our ordinance originally drafted in 1965 still that need to be brought up to current standards, not just for ease of evaluation, but for making it so that they make sense under our modern standards. And hopefully then we can address parking definitively and substantially at that point.
And I agree with that. I'm not against an overall rewrite. My concern is, I'm in year 7. I've been up here for 7 years. And it sounds like I'm not going to get a parking change that we all acknowledge on the ground already exists until year 9 or year 10. If I'm elected by the voters yet again, because we're going to go before them before that. So I watched the planning commission meetings. I watched the people come in here. And, when the census says that in most multifamily in Sterling Heights, a 2-bedroom unit, you have 1.5 residents. Our ordinance says in multifamily, we require 2.5 parking spaces for that 2-unit building. So we know off the top, we're building 1 more parking space than is required per unit, just to get the basic parking system in place. Now, I know that over a certain number of units, we have allowances and we reduce some things. But, I personally took a survey of my condo complex, which has 200 units, give or take. And there was more than 50 open parking spaces in my unit on a Wednesday night at 8 p.m. I counted them all. And it's mind-blowing that we are allowing, this, essentially a cost. When we require, developers or business owners to maintain this parking is not a net value add, it's a negative. You have to protect it from potholes, you have to clear it in the wintertime, you have to stripe it, you have to repair it. It's expensive. That's why we have concerns about the parking structures at Lakeside in the future. That's gonna add costs because parking is expensive. It's not free. And I see so many, we're reducing them administratively where we can in the overlay districts and in the PUDs, but we still have problems in other places where I guess what we all know and what the residents know are 2 different things right now. And I see residents coming in and saying, well, your ordinance says you have to have 300 parking spaces. Why are you giving this person 188? It makes no sense. You're violating your own ordinances. And I think it would be much clearer to residents and much more effective to the general public if we adopted, at least in the interim, some rules that made sense. I can understand wanting to get everything in order. And I'm not saying this needs to go for every type of residential or commercial development. But as you just gave us a presentation on in these moratoriums we're doing, we know what's coming before us. So is it possible, and this may be more of a rhetorical question for you to think about, which I'm not expecting an answer today, but is it possible to do something in the interim to fix this problem? Because we all know that we're creating too much parking. And it's a net value negative to the business owners. It's a cost. And then when residents get frustrated They come in here and they yell at us, or they yell at the planning commission, and they say, you're not following your ordinances. We know they don't work, we know we're gonna get rid of them, but it's not, it's like a disconnect. You understand what I'm not being clear here.
No.
But it's a frustration of mine, because we've known, we had a report, I think, during the pandemic that came back that said, yeah, you got way too much parking everywhere. So we all know it's a thing. I just don't know how to cure it. And I understand, I want you to do the total thing. It needs to all be rewritten. I've been banging that drum for a long time. Mr. Vanderpool will tell you. I was in his office years ago banging the drum on this. But I think that developers are confused. I think the general public is confused. Because I know that the Planning Commission tried to eliminate more parking from the most recent Marketplace Cove proposal. You know, the Marketplace Cove proposal. And, pardon me, Israel, you interrupted me. Lost my thought. They recommended to remove more spaces. And a developer didn't understand what they were trying to say to him. It was clear to me. They were saying, you don't need all this parking. And they're like, we're just trying to comply with the ordinance. They're like, well, what if you made all this land banked or green space, which doesn't actually remove parking. It still counts as parking, it's green space now. And the developer was still like unclear. So I don't know what we can do, and maybe it's rhetorical. I'll let Mr. Vanderpool respond in 1 second here. But I just have real deep concerns that some of these projects are being held up, or residents are getting very excited or animated about them without knowing what we need to do in the future. If you want to respond, Mr. Vanderpool, feel free.
Mr. Vanderpool.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilman Radke, yes, I appreciate the opportunity to respond. We have talked about this extensively, and we're not waiting. The reality is that the development projects that have come before you, the parking requirements have been reduced significantly, and certainly the city planner can highlight those specifically, but there have been a significant number, so we're not waiting. In addition, we have development meetings every Thursday. The City Development Department meets with developers every Thursday, and we talk about their concepts. These are developers that come in with any project they may have in mind, and when we get to parking requirements, the planning office clearly explains what we believe to be the new best practice that ultimately will be codified in the zoning ordinance, but we are not waiting. So there are many examples where we've already done this. We're going to continue to do that. It is certainly, I think we're all aligned that with new developments, less parking is better. We can always land bank, which we've done. Christian Financial Credit Union is a good example. We can land bank property, and if parking turns out to be a problem in the future, they will then be required to expand their parking. But I just wanted to highlight that.
I appreciate that, Mr. Vanderpool. And I guess I have two more thoughts. One, I guess through the chair to Mr. Vanderpool or Dr. Parcell, we've been land banking parking now for several years, at least since I've been on council, and I assume they probably were doing it a little bit before that. Has any time we've land banked parking as a business come back to us and said, you know what, I need that parking, I want to turn it into parking? Have you had any requests for that?
Not in my time.
So when we're land banking parking, we're essentially, it's not really land banked, we're just trying to get it to green space because no businesses are coming back and saying, you know what, I think that's what the disconnect is. These owners think they need it, and then they realize they don't, and then everything's good, but the residents get frustrated. What brought this to my mind was I had the opportunity last week with SEMCOG to go to Oak Park and to walk through their 9-mile nonlinear park and traffic diet they did there. And it's tremendous. And if anyone hasn't seen it, you should go and see it. They've made 9 Mile tremendously safer. They've added tremendous public art. They've added 3 local public parks. They closed 2 streets and made end caps, and one was a house that had burned down. They bought the property and they made a park there. And they all connect to neighborhoods now. So now you can go from the neighborhoods directly to 9 Mile, not at the corners, not having to come out of your subdivision, but straight away. And you could see new businesses. There was tremendous new business activity around this road diet. What it's done is it's shortened the street. It's made it quieter, and it's also brought people there for the art and for the walk. And they've added a cycle track on part of it. It's a tremendous thing. But they also are now having transit-oriented developments entering Oak Park. Now, I had a long conversation with the mayor of Oak Park, and she was telling me that they just approved their first transit-oriented development, which was 35 units with 38 parking spaces. And as of right now, they've never had all 38 parking spaces that they know of be used. Because it's literally a bus stop right in front of the transit-oriented development, and they have the cycle track right out front, so people are using bicycles, for that purpose. So that made me really start to think about maybe we're not moving fast enough on eliminating or reducing our parking requirements. Because if Oak Park can do it, we can do it. And I guess that's what I'm thinking of. Even if we could, in the meantime, give you more administrative authority to reduce these parking minimums that we know don't make any sense, I would be in favor of that. Because I think at the end of all this, we're going to come to find out that our parking minimums are going to be halved or 3/4 gone, because it just doesn't make sense in this day and age. And I worry that we're approving developments now, we're creating future parking problems in the future. Because as it stands right now, the only thing that's not endangered in Sterling Heights is the parking lot. I guess gas stations are endangered and drive-throughs are endangered, but parking lots aren't. They're proliferating. And I'd like to put an end to that. Thank you for the opportunity to talk today, Mr. Mayor. I don't have, I hope the Office of Planning really thinks about this, because to me, it can't wait anymore. It's just like the RV reduction we did. You could park your RV in RM2. I've been up here for 7 years, it never happened. A couple years ago, we started talking about removing it. Then it's like, we're gonna wait. I finally got sick and tired and said, no, we're gonna do it now, because it keeps coming up. And I prefer not to wait 10 years to finally get to what we all know and agree today. If we all know and agree today, let's do something in the interim to set the stage for what we're doing next. I hope we can think about that and maybe talk about it more in the future. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, just real briefly on that point. I appreciate what Mr. Vanderpool's saying, and I think for the most part, we're catching most of the developers, that we're not losing developers because they think, oh man, there's so much parking required, we're never gonna get approved. But I had a similar experience in my private sector job where I was helping a client with a development in another city, and speaking with the city attorney in that city, they're like, yeah, you might try this because the city council seems to be relaxing its parking standards. That doesn't give you a lot of confidence. I mean, it's sort of some confidence, but it's not a lot of confidence. I think it would be helpful if we had something on the books that said that we don't need it. Just my 2 cents, to clarify, so that, because it seems like what's happening is they're coming into the Thursday meetings, they're going through a long process, and we're probably being very open with them. Look, you're not going to need all this parking, even though the ordinance says it. The city council's been very relaxed on that, and it makes a lot of sense, and we've got alternatives. But I think we should just have a uniform approach from the code to the approval. So I'm in agreement. Anyone else reports?
Mayor Taylor.
Mrs. Sarowski.
So thank you very much. I will not be speaking on parking. That's been done. So thank you for giving me the opportunity. It was mentioned very briefly in the city manager's report that this is Memorial Day weekend coming up, and we are going to be having a parade. So I just wanted to reiterate the invitation for all the residents to please come out on Monday for our Memorial Day, both the addresses from the residents, my husband, or not the residents, the dignitaries. And we're going to have the Tuskegee my husband, yes, he's one of them. But the Tuskegee, him too. Mayor Taylor, Jeannie Shabath Lewis, the Tuskegee Airmen. It's going to be a really nice parade. It's always a great event. It's one of my favorite things of the city. We were coming long before my husband or I were ever involved in city government, just to be involved with the parade. It's wonderful. We bring our kids. My son, who's a Marine, is going to be coming back from San Diego to be a part of this. Our whole family will be involved. It's just a great event, and it's wonderful that we can honor the veterans, people who have served in this country and given the ultimate sacrifice. This is what that's about. So please come out, honor the veterans and those who have served. It's a great day. It's Memorial Day, so most people have the day off or have taken the day off if they couldn't, if they are still working. So thank you for listening to me, and I hope to see you at that parade. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Sarowski. Anyone else? If not, I'll just echo that and say hope to see you on Memorial Day. Let's see, do we have a forecast yet, Mr. Vanderpool? Should I even bring it up?
It looks like rain.
Chance of rain.
That's depressing.
But
It's been a while. I don't know. I can't remember. Have we ever, in my 15 years, I don't remember.
We've had rain, but it's been about almost 30 years ago. It's been a bit, so.
Well, fingers crossed, because,
But it was looking good a week ago, and then they just predicted rain like just yesterday, so it could change. Usually this is
hoping-
Michigan.
I'm hoping for no rain. We're celebrating my grandmother's 90th birthday that afternoon after the parade, so happy birthday, Grandma. I know you watch every meeting. Just kidding.
Of course she does.
Of course she,
Your baby.
of course she doesn't, she does. Of course she's not a Sterling Heights resident, so I don't blame her, but.
YouTube.
Yeah, she can watch it on YouTube. So, all right, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support.
It's been moved and supported with no discussion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.